Chapter 12:15. And Lin found a corner and slowly revealed himself. Strangely enough, none of the people around him noticed this. It was as if he were just an ordinary cultivator with no presence at all. "Then let the auction begin," the MC shouted. As soon as she finished speaking, an Earth-class cultivator called out 600,000 spirit stones. Immediately after, even the human-class cultivator called out, raising the price to 650,000 spirit stones. The cultivators continued to raise the price, but neither Lin nor Huang Fuan spoke. The price slowly increased, and before they knew it, it had already reached 1 million spirit stones. At this time, very few people called out bids. 1 million spirit stones was already the limit of what most cultivators could afford for a mysterious, immortal rank item. If they continued to raise the price, it would not be worth it. 1,100,000. And Lin finally spoke. The moment he spoke, he attracted countless gazes. There were even a few gasps of surprise mixed in. There was no other reason than he was a human-class cultivator. Cultivators of this level, almost no one dared to bid above 1 million spirit stones. Who is this person? I don't know. He hasn't made a sound before. He looks quite ordinary. I didn't expect him to be so rich. Many cultivators in the auction hall secretly discussed among themselves. 1,200,000. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded from the heaven class. Everyone instantly turned their gazes to the sky. The person who called out the bid was none other than the azure-robed Huang Fuan. And Lin also glanced at Huang Fuan and cursed in his heart. It's this bastard who likes to raise the price again. He's King poisonous. He had no choice but to continue bidding. 1,300,000. The cultivators all exclaimed in surprise again. Heavens! This unknown cultivator actually dares to compete with a heaven-class cultivator? Is he crazy? That person seems to be called Huang Fuan. He's an extremely powerful cultivator who recently rose to power in the Heavenly River State. It's said that he and the second princess of the Flaming River Imperial family, Yin Meng, have an arranged battle. This is a child of destiny. That human-class cultivator really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Isn't he afraid of being killed by this person's halo? As expected, Huang Fuan's expression completely darkened. None of the cultivators present recognized that item. How could that cultivator recognize it? Impossible. He's clearly making things difficult for me. Huang Fuan. 1,500,000 spirit stones. Huang Fuan continued to bid. Now, his bid had exceeded the starting price by 1 million spirit stones. Even the auctioneer's expression changed when she saw this. Logically speaking, an immortal-ranked mysterious item was not worth such a high price. Could it be that these two cultivators knew something? Some of the cultivators began to stir. 6 million spirit stones. And Lin continued to shout. Huang Fuan glowered at Lin and growled like a wild beast. "Fellow Taoist, you're playing with fire." And Lin rolled his eyes and snappily said, "Price-raising demon, I really have my eyes on this piece of wood. No one can take it away from me. Be careful not to raise the price too high, or you won't have enough money to buy it." Huang Fuan was so angry that his body trembled. He gritted his teeth and yelled, 1,800,000 spirit stones. And Lin raised his hand indifferently. 2 million spirit stones. The cultivators in the auction hall all sucked in a breath of cold air. Did this amount of money just fall from the sky? These two were actually fighting to such an extent for an immortal-ranked material? Huang Fuan was just about to raise his hand to bid when the black bead suddenly flashed. Elder Ming's voice traveled over. "Stop fighting. Don't forget why we're here at the auction hall. Don't run out of money to bid for that item." Huang Fuan took a deep breath and glared at Lin angrily. Finally, he slowly lowered his hand. Going once, going twice, going thrice old. The auctioneer officially announced that Lin had become the owner of that mysterious item. A victorious expression appeared on Lin's face. The bone marrow of the Tao integration stage true dragon, Yi Tsuntian, was a divine rank material, let alone 2 million spirit stones. Even 20 million spirit stones would be worth fighting over. Huang Fuwen's expression darkened. He glanced at Enlin and thought to himself, I'll let you be smug for a while. What's mine will be mine. No one can take it away from me. He was determined to obtain the bone marrow of the Tao integration stage, True Dragon. At this moment, a beautiful female cultivator walked toward Enlin. There was a faint smile on her face. Hello, the amount of money involved in your auction is quite large. May I ask if you could show us your assets? The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion needs to conduct further verification. Many cultivators started to look toward Enlin. Their faces were filled with schadenfreude. Huang Fuwen also became excited, and he looked at Enlin with a burning gaze. If Enlin was the type of person who maliciously raised the price and didn't have enough assets, then he wouldn't even know how he died in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Enlin wasn't surprised, nor did he mind. He opened his storage ring and said calmly, Take a look for yourself. The beautiful female cultivator cast her consciousness into Enlin's storage ring. Then, she was blinded by Enlin's mountain of spirit stones. Oh my God! The female cultivator stumbled a few steps back in shock. At the same time, she looked at Enlin with reverence. She hurriedly lowered her head and said, I'm sorry, fellow cultivator. I've offended you before. Please accept my apologies. The gloating cultivators in the auction hall were all dumbfounded. What the F***? Did her attitude change so quickly? This was too real. Huang Fuwen's heart was in turmoil. He also looked at Enlin in shock. He knew why the female cultivator's attitude had changed so much. It was all because of the shocking wealth of this human-ranked cultivator. He's so rich, yet he's willing to sit in the human-ranked seats. Is this guy better at pretending to be weak than me? He ignored the changes in the expressions of the cultivators in the auction hall. Enlin merely waved his hand and said calmly, It's all right. Leave after you're done looking. Yes. The female cultivator nodded obediently and left. Although Enlin had already given 100 million to Chong, there were still 55 million spirit stones in his storage ring. He had never seen a return to void stage mighty figure with this kind of wealth. It was no wonder that the female cultivator's attitude had changed so drastically. She simply couldn't afford to offend him. The auction continued. Huang Fuwen didn't participate in the auction. He seemed to be waiting for something. Soon, the last item, the profound snow heavenly ice root, began to be auctioned. The starting price was 1,500,000 spirit stones. This was an extremely precious medicinal ingredient. Its value was even higher than that of many high-rank immortal pills. Even so, there was still an endless stream of people bidding for it. The heaven-rank cultivators were extremely fanatical about it, and they increased the price without any hesitation. Enlin's eyes wandered over the group of cultivators, trying to find a weakness in their defenses. The dark essence or hadn't been auctioned, which meant that the other party wasn't here to sell something. Instead, they were here to buy something. This meant that there was a very high probability that the other party was among the cultivators who had won the auction. Chapter 12:16. 3,500,000, 3,600,000, 3,700,000, and Lin chuckled as he looked in the direction that Duan Feiyong had left. And Lin's eyes lit up. The group of cultivators began to leave the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. And Lin also followed Duan Feiyong out. Huang Fuwen also looked at Duan Feiyong with a dark expression. He also wanted this treasure, but he really didn't have that much money left in his storage ring. If it weren't for Huang Fuwen raising the price, he would have been able to obtain this dark snow heavenly ice root for just over 3 million. And Lin, the target, is currently moving toward the south. Right at this moment, Duan Feiyong suddenly stopped in his tracks. Huang Fuwen gradually calmed down upon hearing this. He glanced at Duan Feiyong and Enlin, and a smile appeared on his face. That's right. There's always a way out. We still have a chance, although they had concealed themselves very well. Who was Enlin? Enlin's consciousness was comparable to that of a cultivator at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. How could these concealment techniques fool him? Logically speaking, even return to Void stage mighty figures would find it difficult to detect him when he was in his mist immortal technique state. Don't worry, there's always a way out. We still have a chance. It's just that he's really arrogant. He actually dares to openly appear here and participate in this auction after doing such a thing. Does he really think that the 4-9 Immortal Sect is nothing? Huang Fu nodded. Of course. I definitely won't hold back against cultivators who harbor evil intentions and want to commit evil. This person was none other than Huang Fuan. 5 million. And Lin, who was running at the front, was a bit surprised. Is Huang Fuan going to eat all of us? What a F** king appetite. However, Duan Feiyong had a mystic technique that could raise his cultivation base to the return to void stage. Huang Fuan was definitely going to die here. After taking care of all this, Huang Fuan continued to follow in Lin and Duan Feiyong. A black figure wriggled and gradually revealed itself. Damn it, how do we get discovered so quickly? Huang Fuan's expression was one of indignation, and Lin was startled. How did he get discovered so quickly? As expected of the fierce person who destroyed the second team of the Divine Mirror Law Enforcement Department. This level of perception was shocking. Most of them were gathered in the Heaven and Earth class seats. Most of them were people with powerful cultivations or powerful backgrounds. And Lin was just about to reveal himself when Duan Feiyong spoke again, the one who was fighting in the forest earlier. Do you really think that I don't know of your existence? What? You want to kill me and steal my treasure? The auction ended. When Huang Fuan reappeared, his hands were already stained with blood. At the same time, there were 2 shiny storage rings on his hands. He said righteously, "Umph. Evil cultivators like these should be killed before they do anything bad." From the discussions of the surrounding cultivators, and Lin gained a rough understanding of the Heaven-class man's identity. His name was Duan Feiyong, and he was the young sect master of the Thunder Prefecture's top sect, the Divine Feathers sect. His cultivation base was at the peak divine transformation realm, and he was extremely powerful and had a terrifying background. He was the most dazzling existence in the auction house. And Lin paid the bill and successfully obtained the Dao integration stage True Dragon Essence Bone Marrow. Bai Ling had said that the other party was most likely a soul formation stage cultivator. Thus, the range of suspects could be narrowed down to only 12 cultivators. And Lin, damn it, why are they all fighting for what I want? I really can't accept this. He felt like everything was going wrong recently. Duan Feiyong was moving toward the south. It looked like he was the culprit. Don't worry. And Lin ended the voice transmission and continued to tail Huang Fuan. Be careful, Bai Ling advised. The enemy's methods are very strange. If you can take care of him, then take care of him as soon as possible. And Lin used the Mist Immortal technique to tail Huang Fuan. He left the extreme Emperor's city and followed him to the outskirts. Bai Ling's voice sounded from the voice transmission talisman. Only then would he be able to master a mystic technique that could elevate his power to the return to void stage. That's right, Duan Feiyong was the most suspicious. 2 muffled groans soon sounded from the forest. After saying this, his figure had already transformed into a pitch-black blade. He darted through the forest at an extremely terrifying speed. His movements were silent, but his killing intent was eerie. Duan Feiyong, who had successfully won the bid, waved his fan lightly. He even glared at Huang Fuan with rage in his eyes. Huang Fuan and the other white-robed male were red in the face from their bickering. Elder Ming's voice sounded again. Huang Fuan's smile became even wider as he said this. Arrogant brat, do you really think that you can do evil just because you have some power and some money? I'll let you know that evil will be punished in the end. How is it? Bai Ling asked with a concerned expression. It looks like that cultivator wants to steal Duan Feiyong's things. If that's the case, after he steals Duan Feiyong's things, I'll be able to jump out as a righteous person and kill that cultivator. That way, my actions will be justified. Moreover, I'll be able to obtain the Origin Bone Essence and the Dark Essence, or at the same time. The plot was completely off. Huang Fuan and Duan Feiyong were currently engaged in a life and death battle. 1,000 meters away from Enlin, there was a faintly discernible dark object hidden within the forest. It was rapidly traversing through the forest. It was the appearance of Huang Fuan when he unleashed his secret technique. And Lin finally turned his gaze toward the 30 or so cultivators. So it wasn't him? In the end, the profound snow heavenly ice root was won by Duan Feiyang at the exorbitant price of 5 million spirit stones. One of them was Huang Fuan, who had competed with him for the origin bone essence. This was getting interesting, very successful. I'm preparing to make my move. However, there are still 3 followers behind me. This is a little interesting. I wonder what they're thinking. And Lin chuckled lightly. He turned around and waved his fan calmly. Come on out. I know you're nearby. At this moment, the price of the profound snow heavenly ice root had already exceeded 3 million spirit stones. The profound snow heavenly ice root was simply too rare. The divine frost wings cultivation method that he cultivated required this treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bid 5 million spirit stones for it. The 3 followers behind him were all heaven-class cultivators. For a million, now that he had obtained a divine rank material, his mood improved significantly. There's really a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. This situation is even better than I had imagined. I had initially thought that I would have to choose between the Dao integration stage True Dragon Essence Bone or the Dark Essence Oregon. Now I have both of them together. Everything had clearly been planned out. Duan Feiyang would first be killed by that cultivator and his treasure would be stolen. Then, he would step forward and kill that evil cultivator in order to uphold justice. But why was he discovered first? Elder Ming's voice also sounded. The other 2 cultivators are also secretly following Duan Feiyang. Don't forget to take care of them. This is interesting. And Lin's eyes narrowed slightly. As Lin spoke softly, his gaze gradually turned cold. Chapter 12:17. Huang Fuan discreetly glanced at Lin, and only heaved a sigh of relief when he discovered that Lin hadn't left. He then shifted his gaze back to Duan Feiyang. Duan Feiyang laughed coldly and said, Do you know who I am? I'm the young sect master of the Divine Feathers sect. You actually dare to have designs on me? Are you really tired of living? A look of disdain appeared on Huang Fuan's face. What kind of **T Divine Feather sect is this? Is it that powerful? He wasn't even afraid of the 4-9 Immortal sect. So why would he be afraid of a sect that only ruled over a single state? I, Huang Fuan, am not afraid of trash like you who bully others. And Lin's expression faltered upon hearing this. Why did he have to bring his 4-9 Immortal sect into this? Moreover, his words were quite arrogant. How arrogant. A soul formation intermediate stage cultivator dares to call me. A soul formation pinnacle stage cultivator trash? He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Don't tell me you think it's easy to kill me just because you killed 2 useless semi-god realm cultivators? I'm afraid you still don't know how big the gap between us was, right? To me, you're just an ant. As Duan Feiyang said this, his aura, which belonged to someone at the pinnacle of the divine transformation stage, suddenly erupted from his body. Huang Fuan was enraged. No one has ever been able to leave alive after insulting me. Huang Fuan. Duan Feiyang. Huang Fuan pointed at Duan Feiyang and shouted righteously. One of your Divine Feathers sect's disciples killed 3 innocent mortals in a battle. I want to avenge them. It's time for you to pay the price. Go to hell. Duan Feiyang blinked. What's that? Rumble. At this moment, Huang Fuan had already pounced over. His hands were like blades, and the power in his body gathered in his hands. Netherworld chi was highly condensed, causing his hands to be as sharp as black blades. The netherworld sky was broken. Huang Fuan slashed out with his hand, creating a terrifying, pitch-black arc in the air. Duan Feiyang had already equipped his fists with a high-rank spirit tool on them. There was no fear on his face as he clenched his fists tightly and punched toward Huang Fuan. Rumble. Huang Fuan's hand blade collided with Duan Feiyang's fist. The energy exploded, annihilating everything within 1,000 meters. An explosive sound suddenly rang out from Duan Feiyang's fist, and blood splattered out of his hand. Duan Feiyong let out a blood-curdling scream as he retreated explosively. Never would he have thought that a soul formation intermediate stage cultivator would be able to unleash such a terrifying spell technique. Huang Fuan followed up with another attack, his hands slashing at Duan Feiyong like blades. Duan Feiyong was at a complete disadvantage as soon as the battle began. Huang Fuan's powerful strength and strange and unpredictable spell techniques were all difficult for him to parry. My aptitude and spell techniques are clearly top-notch as well. Why are you so powerful? Duan Feiyong became more and more shocked as he fought. A pair of white wings of light materialized behind him. It was clear that he wanted to retreat. And Lin was a little puzzled. Why hadn't Duan Feiyong activated his body and instantly killed Huang Fuan? Now that things have come to this, you still want to hide your strength? Duan Feiyong spread his wings of light and fled into the distance. His speed had already reached the pinnacle of the divine transformation realm. Don't even think of escaping. When Huang Fuan saw that Duan Feiyong was trying to escape, he immediately tossed out a talisman. This was a talisman that he had obtained from a historical remnant, and it possessed a powerful binding force. Whoosh! A blue rune shot out from the talisman, and as a ripple of energy spread outward, a terrifying binding force froze heaven and earth. Duan Feiyong was horrified to discover that his body had been frozen solid. At this moment, Huang Fuan had already arrived before him, and his black hand descended mercilessly. No, you can't kill me. If I die, the Divine Feather Sect definitely won't let you off. Duan Feiyong yelled. Divine Feather Sect? Heh, that sect is nothing to me. One day, I, Huang Fuan, will raise the Divine Feather Sect to the ground. Huang Fuan chuckled coldly as his hands descended mercilessly. Splat! Blood splattered through the air. Duan Feiyong was torn into two by Huang Fuan, and his vitality was severed. The young sect leader of the Divine Feather Sect had died, just like that. A smile appeared on Huang Fuan's face as he skillfully took away the young sect leader's belongings. Duan Feiyong was arrogant and despotic, Huang Fuan said. He persecuted innocent women and treated other low-rank cultivators like ants. This is what he deserved. I've done justice on behalf of the heavens. There was a righteous expression on Huang Fuan's face as he recounted the crimes of the deceased young sect leader. Meanwhile, Lin was completely dumbfounded. Didn't Duan Feiyong possess the power of a return to Void Stage Cultivator for a short period of time? How'd he die just like that? Wasn't this too illogical? He had been sharpening his saber in preparation for a great battle with this boss. In the end, he was killed by some random Huang Fuan before the battle even began. Huang Fuan turned his gaze toward the white mist in the sky. Stop hiding. I know you're there. Lin's heart jolted in shock. Even Duan Feiyong hadn't been able to see through his mist immortal technique, but a soul formation intermediate stage cultivator had seen through it, and Lin began to reveal his true form. I didn't think that you would be able to see me. I've underestimated you. A faint smile appeared on Huang Fuan's face, and his eyes were pitch black and profound. I possess the Dark King's true eye, which can see through all illusions. Naturally, I can also see through your concealment spell techniques. You're very powerful. Although you're also at the soul formation pinnacle stage like Duan Feiyong, the sense of danger you give me is far greater than Duan Feiyong's. Although Huang Fuan was saying this, there wasn't a single hint of nervousness on his face. He chuckled lightly. It's a pity that you encountered me. In my eyes, you're merely a slightly larger ant. I don't like to kill innocent people. You stole something from me, so hand it over obediently and piss off. I can spare your life if you do so. And Lin was astonished. I used money to bid for something. How is that stealing? You shouldn't have stolen something from me, Huang Fuan. Do you understand? Dark power revolved around Huang Fuan's hands again, and his aura soared explosively, and Lin's lips twitched. Are you insane? His attitude was very clear. He was looking at Huang Fuan as if he were looking at an idiot. It was the same last time. I, Huang Fuan, clearly had the ability to obtain the dark essence, but there's always someone who doesn't know what's good for them and tries to steal it from me. You're the same now. It's clearly mine. So why do you always have to take things too hard? Those who obey me will live, and those who oppose me will die. I'm a powerful being who will eventually ascend to the pinnacle. Since you don't know what's good for you, then there's no need for me to hold back anymore. Huang Fuwen's aura became more and more terrifying as he walked toward Enlin. Enlin was rooted to the spot. So that's how it is. He's able to defeat Duan Feiyang at the Soul Formation Intermediate stage, and he's able to detect me. Bai Ling's target is also moving toward the south. Everything was in line. F***CK. This was a huge misunderstanding. Thank God Huang Fuwen said it himself. Are you so scared that you can't even walk? It's too late to regret now, and should just lie on the ground. You're seeking death if you insist on stealing something from me. Huang Fuwen chuckled coldly as he slashed his hands toward Enlin. Whoosh! Enlin instantly disappeared from the spot. Huang Fuwen's pupils contracted. Before he had a chance to react, a golden fist imbued with terrifying power had already arrived in front of his face. Then, it descended upon him. It was simply too fast. There was no way for him to evade. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Golden energy surged for several kilometers. Huang Fuwen's face was flattened, and his teeth and nose were shattered by the force of the punch. PFFF. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his entire body was sent flying for over a kilometer before tumbling to the ground like a rag doll. Chapter 12:18. Huang Fuwen felt as if his brain had turned to mush, and he was completely stupefied. Who am I? Where am I? What has happened? His entire body felt like it was falling apart, and his head buzzed as if it had been torn apart. Enlin walked toward Huang Fuwen. Dark Essence Mine, it looks like you killed all the members of the 4-9 Immortal Sects Divine Mirror Enforcement Team, right? 4-9 Immortal Sects Divine Mirror Enforcement Team? Huang Fuwen crawled up from the ground, and a hint of fear finally appeared on his face. Who on earth are you? Hee. So you were the one who killed them. I am Enlin. Enlin reverted to his original appearance and walked toward Huang Fuwen. Huang Fuwen's expression changed drastically when he saw the familiar face that often appeared in the newspapers. Elder Ming, lend me a hand. He roared. He never imagined that the cultivator he had looked down upon would actually be the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, the most dazzling prodigy among the younger generation of the Kingdom of the Nine States. The black orb suddenly lit up. A white-haired elder leaped out from the orb and attached himself to Huang Fuwen's body. Huang Fuwen's aura climbed steadily until it reached the return to void stage. The pitch-black power of darkness caused all the plants within a radius of several dozen kilometers to wither and all the animals to lose their vitality. It was as if the god of death had descended upon this world. Elder Ming's voice traveled over again. Huang Fuwen, we are no match for Enlin right now. Let's retreat for now and stop fighting. Huang Fuwen also knew that he was no match for Enlin right now. Even with Elder Ming's power, he was still no match for Enlin. However, he was supremely talented, and he was confident that he would one day crush Enlin beneath his feet. There was no rush. Huang Fuwen's aura became extremely vast and powerful. He yelled at the approaching Enlin, Enlin, you could be as arrogant as you want right now. Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully. Before he could finish a sentence, Enlin had already appeared before him again, and his golden fist crashed down. Due to Elder Ming's possession, Huang Fuwen finally had a chance to react. Pitch-black netherworld energy surged out and swept toward Enlin. The vast power of nirvanic extermination devoured everything it came into contact with into nothingness. However, Enlin's golden fist tore through all the power of the netherworld and smashed into Huang Fuwen's chest, causing it to cave in completely. Pooh! Huang Fuwen felt as if all of his internal organs had been shattered by this punch. He spat out a large mouthful of blood and tumbled to the ground again. Enlin walked toward Huang Fuwen step by step and said coldly, Don't bully the young for being poor. Do you really think you're Xiaohua? So what if I bully you? Not satisfied? Huang Fuan was so angry that his entire body trembled. He glared at Lin with a face full of resentment. Don't let me escape. Otherwise, Huang Fuan, will definitely repay this debt tenfold, 100-fold. Rumble. Huang Fuan's aura surged once again, and his eyes became bloodshot. Both of his arms had split open, and blood was gushing out of them. It was clear that he had used a mystic technique with severe repercussions. A pair of pitch-black, sky-encompassing claws tore through the clouds and descended from the sky. The gigantic claws were actually imbued with the power of the Netherworld Divine Tao. Black Witch Netherworld Claw. Huang Fuan roared as he unleashed all of his power. This was a full-force attack on par with a return to Void final stage Cultivator. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. His entire body was enveloped in flames, and his skin became crimson gold in color. He took a step forward, and his entire body became like a flaming meteor as he crashed into the descending Black Witch Netherworld Claw. Then, under Huang Fuan's dumbstruck expression, the Black Witch Netherworld Claw was shattered into pieces. Lin descended once again. His target was Huang Fuan. No! Huang Fuan roared as he summoned all of his power to defend himself. And Lin's body was like a war chariot as he tore through all of the power of the Netherworld. He gripped Huang Fuan's neck with one hand and forcefully slammed him into the ground. Rumble. The ground caved in. A gigantic crater with a radius of over 1,000 meters appeared. Huang Fuan coughed up blood as he lay in the center of the crater. His neck was still tightly gripped by Lin. It's time for you to pay with your life for the 55 members of the Divine Mirror Enforcement Department, and Lin said indifferently. Huang Fuan glared at Lin with rage. I didn't do anything wrong. Why do I have to pay with my life? They stole my dark essence mine, and they were in the wrong first. They all deserve to die. Lin, did this brother selectively forget something? Huang Fuan continued, I, Huang Fuan, am the son of Providence. I was born with the dark root, and with Elder Ming's help, I will definitely reach the pinnacle of the immortal Tao. You can't kill me. Wait for me for another 10 years if you dare. After 10 years, I will definitely. Kacha! A crisp sound suddenly rang out. Huang Fuan's neck had been crushed. Even until the last second of his life, he was still unable to believe that his life had ended just like that. It was so abrupt that he didn't even get to finish his lines. You really have a lot of F***king nonsense to say. And Lin casually tossed Huang Fuan into the crater. If you can reincarnate, remember not to provoke the 4-9 immortal sect in your next life. And Lin snapped his fingers, and a divine flame burst forth, incinerating Huang Fuan into nothingness. Huang Fuan's face, which was filled with unwillingness, disbelief, remorse, fear, all sorts of expressions, was finally incinerated into nothingness by the divine flame. There's finally one less lunatic in this world. And Lin sighed with emotion. He picked up the storage ring from the ground, only to discover that there was a black bead lying silently on the ground. Huh, what's this? It looks like, and Lin recalled the projection that had appeared earlier. It was because of that projection that Huang Fuan's strength had increased explosively. That seemed to be a consciousness body. He picked up the bead and examined it. He discovered that it was just an ordinary bead. Just because it looked like an ordinary bead on the surface didn't mean that it was actually an ordinary bead. A white light flashed across in Lin's eyes. Divine inspection technique. Soul-holding bead. The bead can store one's consciousness, which is equivalent to a physical body. However, it requires a constant supply of energy in order for it to function normally. Provide energy? Is that so? And Lin injected his vital energy into the bead. The bead suddenly lit up, and an old man suddenly dashed out from within the bead, pouncing toward Lin. I'm going to avenge my disciple. Go to hell. The projection of the white-haired old man bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced toward Lin. A powerful divine sense erupted from his body. Even though his divine sense was already extremely weak, the might it exuded was still extremely terrifying. One could imagine just how powerful its master was when he still had a physical body. Ordinary return to void stage mighty figures might be intimidated. However, his opponent was Enlin, whose divine sense was extremely powerful. Splat. The white-haired old man was slapped to the ground by Enlin's divine sense. If it weren't for the fact that my physical body was destroyed, you wouldn't have the chance to act so atrociously here. The white-haired old man's expression was one of rage and humiliation. Are you done? Goodbye. And Lin stomped his foot down. No, as long as you don't kill me, I can. Bam! The earth tremored violently. The white-haired old man didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was reduced to dust by Enlin. You've killed so many members of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. How can I not kill you? Enlin spoke in an indifferent voice. Enlin was completely uninterested in the old man's threat of not killing him. After all, this old man had to die. Chapter 12:19. After taking care of some matters here, Enlin flew toward the 4-9 Immortal Sect. He had obtained the Dark Essence, which was the core material needed to modify the Starfire battleship. He was a little curious as he refined Huang Fuan's storage ring to see what was inside. The storage ring contained all of Duan Feiyong and Huang Fuan's belongings. There was one black snow heavenly ice root, which was worth 5 million spirit stones, 13 spirit weapons, hundreds of spirit pills, 3 immortal pills, 8 million spirit stones, the immortal grade demon emperor skeleton, and 5 different colored beads. What were these beads used for? Enlin asked curiously. He pulled out the 5 beads and activated his divine inspection technique. Sky Sealing Dark King Bead. Collect the 9 dark beads scattered by the Sky Sealing Dark King in this world, and you can proceed to the Dark King Palace to obtain the true inheritance of the Sky Sealing Dark King. Enlin's expression changed drastically. It's the Sky Sealing Dark King. The Sky Sealing Dark Monarch was extremely renowned on the Taichu continent, and his name was synonymous with terror in the Kingdom of the 9 States. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Sky Sealing Dark King was the most powerful demon king in the Kingdom of the 9 States. He founded the Divine Dark Dao sect, and it was said that he had 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures and over 100 return to void stage mighty figures under his command. He was so powerful that he could even threaten the rule of the Celestial Court. At that time, there was a real devil sect. Many sects dared to call themselves devil sects, openly practicing evil arts, committing crimes, and committing evil everywhere. The reason for this was none other than the fact that they had a colossus like the Divine Dark Dao sect as their role model. However, in the end, the Divine Dark Dao sect was still annihilated by the combined forces of the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court and the sect leaders of the 4 great sections. Furthermore, all of the demonic sects in the Kingdom of the 9 States were wiped out, and all of the demonic cultivators were slaughtered. There are still many stories and legends about that unparalleled battle. The Sky Sealing Dark King and 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures of the Divine Dark Dao sect have already perished a long time ago. Who would have thought that their inheritances would still exist in this world? Huang Fu was born with an extremely terrifying aptitude, and he even had an old grandpa with him. If he had obtained that inheritance, I'm afraid he would have risen at an extremely terrifying speed. It's just that he met me. Enlin smiled faintly. What child of destiny? Ascending to the peak of the immortal Dao. In his eyes, that guy was a lunatic. However, this lunatic's immortal destiny was really King terrifying. Let me inherit the things that you've painstakingly collected. Enlin stowed the bead away before carefully rummaging through his storage ring. Sure enough, he found a map of the Divine Dark Dao sect within his storage ring. The place that the map was pointing to wasn't the Divine Dark Dao sect that had been razed to the ground by the Celestial Court. Instead, it was the new Divine Dark Dao sect that had been built before the Divine Dark Dao sect had been destroyed in order to preserve its legacy. That's interesting. There were also 9 other maps beside the map, all of which were drawn by a certain person with information on the distribution of the Sky Sealing Dark King beads. 5 of these maps had already been crossed out, so it was clear that the beads in those locations had already been obtained. TSK. If I collect all the pearls, I'll be able to reach the sky in a single bound. And there's even an old grandpa helping him. How impressive. And Lin murmured to himself with a smile. The picture should have been drawn by the grandpa with the soul body. Its soul had a decaying smell. It was obvious that it had experienced countless years and was extremely weak. Even so, it was still extremely powerful and was definitely a Tao integration stage mighty figure when it was alive. Its cultivation base was extremely high, and it was also extremely familiar with the divine Dark Tao sect. Perhaps that grandpa with the soul body was a Tao integration stage mighty figure of the divine Dark Tao sect that had survived. Did I just happen to kill a demon king in the cradle? A sense of pride welled up in Lin's heart. Not long after that, he returned to the 4-9 Immortal sect. Bai Ling wore a beautiful white dress, and she stood outside with a smile on her face to welcome Lin back. Behind her were all the core disciples of the sect, as well as the members of the Divine Mirror Enforcement Team who hadn't gone on missions. And Lin suddenly had a bad feeling about this. Welcome back, Sect Leader. Sect Leader has attained the Tao of heaven and earth and attained the pinnacle of martial arts. May your divine glory last for 10,000 years. All of the core disciples and Divine Mirror Enforcement Team members yelled in unison, and their voices erupted into the heavens. And Lin's lips twitched slightly. Sure enough, this was the case. I was just casually making a trip back to the sect, he said with a resigned expression. There's really no need to make such a grand ceremony. Bai Ling shook her head with a dainty smile. The sect leader is personally leading the expedition, but we can't do anything to help. Hence, this is just a token of our appreciation. Speaking of which, you sure are reliable. You returned so quickly. Of course, I've also killed the murderer, Huang Fuan. Those who offend the 4-9 Immortal sect will be punished no matter how far away they are. And Lin handed the dark essence to Bai Ling with an extremely firm expression. A sense of heroism welled up in the hearts of all the disciples upon hearing this. All of the Divine Mirror Enforcement Team members had tears in their eyes as they stared at Lin with scorching light in their eyes. They were all from the Divine Mirror world, so they didn't have much of a sense of belonging to the 4-9 Immortal sect. However, after learning that a member of the enforcement team had been killed as the sect leader, Lin immediately rushed over to slay the enemy. His actions and determination were truly infectious. Lin returned to the sect and checked on the Starfire battleship's repair progress. Currently, the repair progress was already at 10%. Bai Ling activated her small world authority, and it was as if she had suddenly gained tens of thousands of invisible hands, all of which were grabbing at materials. Some of them were forging, and some of them were stitching. And Lin was dazzled by all of this, and he couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Not only was this a reasonable use of one's authority, but it was also a sign that one's brain was extremely developed. It wasn't as simple as just doing 2 things at once. She was doing 10,000 things at once. And Lin felt like he would never be able to perform as well as Bai Ling in this lifetime. So he could only retreat to the side with a sense of inferiority in his heart as he silently sorted through his storage ring. He could actually start looking for the dark beads soon. There were only 4 dark beads left, and they were most likely located in places that Huang Fuan was unable to obtain at his current level of power. One of the maps had Soul Formation Final Stage, 2 had returned to Void Initial Stage, and 1 had returned to Void Intermediate Stage. All of these were so low, and Lin felt like he could take all of them. However, Huang Fuan was only at the Soul Formation Pinnacle Stage when he was only at the Soul Formation Intermediate Stage, so his combat prowess had to be estimated slightly higher. In the end, Lin still felt like he could take all of them. The only thing he was worried about was whether the sky-sealing Dark King's inheritance was suitable for him. If he were to accidentally become a Demon King after obtaining the inheritance, then that would be a huge loss. After all, he only wanted to be a good person. The Starfire battleship incident concluded, and Lin stayed at the sect for another day to practice sword techniques with his disciple. Yiling was very diligent in her cultivation, and she was also very patient. It was as if she had an obsession in her heart, and her large, woof-woof eyes became brighter and brighter, just like her Tao heart. And Lin rewarded Yiling with a bunch of spirit pills and spirit fruits upon seeing her performance. Wow, thank you, Lion Tiger. I want this, that, and that. Okay, open your mouth. And Lin placed a small spirit fruit into Yiling's dainty mouth. Feeding his adorable disciple was also a very good experience. The one-day trip to the sect concluded, and Lin summoned his paragon steed, Dabai, before setting off to the first location where he could obtain dark beads. The Dead Spirit Demonic Land. Chapter 1220. One man and one dog arrived at the main city of the ancient void state via a teleportation spell formation before hurrying toward the Dead Spirit Demonic Land. Along the way, they encountered many cultivators who were flying on swords. Are you crazy? Why aren't you leaving? Why are you blocking my way? Dabai stuck out his tongue as he clawed at the air with his paws. His snowy white tail spun like the propellers of an airplane, blasting air currents behind him like cannons. Whoosh! Dabai spoke with a disdainful expression. You dare to compete with me in speed? Let me show you what true speed is. Flight mode, woof. The Dead Spirit Demonic Land had already become a terrifying restricted area in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Even cultivators would most likely never return from that place, let alone mortals. You've gone too far. The sword cultivator roared with rage, but there was nothing he could do. The male sword cultivator, detestable. The veins on the sword cultivator's forehead bulged. He had never been humiliated like this before. The sword cultivator was on the verge of a mental breakdown. At this moment, a sword cultivator flew past Dabai with his arms crossed over his chest as he glanced at Lin, who was riding atop Dabai with a disdainful expression on his face. 15 minutes passed. He wanted to prove himself, but the gap between him and Lin only grew larger and larger. Dabai faltered slightly upon hearing this. Are you King kidding me? You were the one who refused to submit and follow me all the way here, but now you're blaming me? Woof. You can tolerate this, but I can't, woof. Dabai was also very enraged, and the rings of wind around his paws expanded to more than double their original size as a terrifying sonic boom erupted in the air. PFFF. A gust of wind surged toward the sword cultivator behind him as he spoke. Soon, an even more humiliating event occurred. This was true despair. In reality, Dabai couldn't even muster up any more **T. And Lin smiled, but didn't say anything. Why would he let him ride on his supreme steed if he didn't coax him? To the Dead Spirit Demonic Land, woof. Dabai didn't hide anything. Big brother, and it's rare for me to go out with you, but you're asking me to go to the Dead Spirit Demonic Land with you? Woof. Dabai's body shuddered with fear upon hearing the name of that place, and he spoke with a hint of resentment. The male sword cultivator gritted his teeth. In order to humiliate me in front of me, you didn't hesitate to waste your own time and take such a long and pointless journey. You really are broad-minded. Its speed skyrocketed again. It was even to the extent that after a few tens of thousands of years of evolution, that place had become even stranger and stranger. It had already formed a world of its own, and it was even to the extent that some sort of extremely terrifying laws had been born there. Dabai blushed. Big brother, and you're getting better and better at talking. Woof. Why are you deliberately making life difficult for me? The sword cultivator's expression changed drastically, madly urging the flying sword under his feet, but the flying sword's speed had already risen to its peak, and it could no longer accelerate. Finally, Dabai flew past the sword cultivator and left him behind. We're clearly not going the same way. But very quickly, he pondered over Dabai's words. Wait, you said I followed you all the way? Where are you going? Dabai suddenly came to a realization, and he clapped his paws together. Big brother, and you're so smart, woof. After all, if a sword cultivator isn't prideful, how can they attain the true allure of the sword Tao? The sword is mainly used to kill, and its posture is cool. It's meant to be pretentious. And Lin immediately flared up with rage. What are you looking at? Are you looking down on dog riders? That was once the most prosperous place in the ancient void state. However, During the golden age of the divine Dark Dao sect, the bitter blood Dark Monarch transformed the land within a radius of over 500 kilometers into a land of blood refinement, and billions of living beings perished there. Dubai transformed into a flowing cloud and quickly approached the sword cultivator. The male sword cultivator's eyes widened. Wolsh *T. His pride as a sword immortal gave him an unyielding spirit. Now that he was being ridiculed by a dog and being forced to fart, he was feeling extremely humiliated. How many farts have I given you? Now it's all gone, woof. Dubai drew closer and closer to the sword cultivator. Big brother, look, there's so many cultivators on flying swords. Look at how arrogant they are. It's as if I'm the greatest in this world, woof. Dubai said disdainfully. Your request is really greedy. Big brother, and this guy's perseverance is amazing. He still hasn't given up on chasing us, woof. A rare expression of approval appeared on Dubai's face. The swordsman snorted softly and began to fly forward at a faster speed, as if he couldn't be bothered with Lin. The arrogance and disdain in his behavior became even stronger. After Dubai overtook the sword cultivator, he maintained a relatively static distance, neither too far nor too close. From time to time, he would reward the sword cultivator with bullsh *T. Don't worry about it so much. Continue with your bullshit, and Lin said. Ha ha, you dare to compete with Lord Dog with that broken metal? Do you feel the fear of being dominated by my jet flying dog? Dubai shook his, but at the sword cultivator behind him. That male cultivator was a late soul formation sword immortal. His speed was not to be underestimated, from the looks of it. And Lin also glanced at the relentless sword cultivator with incredulity in his eyes. He knew that he couldn't catch up to them, so why was he still so stubborn? Was this the pride of a sword immortal? Bam! The dead spirit demonic land was located in the ancient void state of the Kingdom of the Nine States. Dubai turned to the sword cultivator behind him and said in a sincere voice of admiration, I respect you for being a true man. Just admit defeat. As long as you admit defeat, I won't feed you any more *T, woof. Dubai grimaced. Big brother, and why does it sound like you're insulting me? Woof. Another 15 minutes later. It was exactly because of this that the aura of resentment there continued to surge into the heavens. That place was indeed terrifying, so it was no wonder that Dubai was scared. It's just a fight. I'm sure that despicable man riding a white dog will leave soon. I'll just have to endure for a while longer. The sword cultivator consoled himself. The male sword cultivator's mouth gaped open as he drew a sharp intake of breath. Holy F *CK. We're going the same way. He had no hope of catching up to Dubai, but he couldn't give up either. As such, he could only continue to endure this humiliation. And Lin explained with a gentle smile, you have to understand them. One of the 4 great sects of the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Heavenly Sword Sect, is located in the ancient void state, so the culture of sword cultivators here is quite good. Everyone desires to become a powerful sword immortal, so it's normal for them to be arrogant. PFFF. Dubai abruptly farted, releasing a terrifying gust of wind that crashed into the sword cultivator's body, making him want to die. The sword cultivator's expression shifted drastically upon seeing this, as if he had been given a fright. Can't that dog up ahead just leave on its own accord? That way, I can use the fact that we're on different paths as an excuse to not chase after that dog, and my Dao heart won't be thwarted. The sword cultivator almost had a heart attack from rage. Dubai, I'm here to protect you. What are you afraid of? And Lin patted the dog's head with a smile. No matter what danger we encounter, I'll always put your safety first. And Lin's expression darkened. Dubai. Chapter 12:21. Going the same way, and Lin and Dubai came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder that this male sword cultivator would follow them so persistently. Wherever Dubai flew, he would chase after him. So, they were kindred spirits. The male sword cultivator wanted to cry, but had no tears. No wonder that white dog was always in front of him. It turned out that both of them had the same destination. Was he going to continue torturing him along the way? Dubai was excited. He swayed his butt and asked, how about it? Do you regret looking at me with that disdainful gaze? Since you look down on me, I'll let you know what true despair is. The male sword cultivator cupped his fists and said to the man riding the dog in front of him through gritted teeth, I've offended the two of you before. I'll apologize to you now. I'm sorry. He knew what he should and shouldn't do now. They were going to travel the same way, so it was unwise to dwell on that matter. Furthermore, he was in the wrong in the first place. He had provoked that dog to buy and insulted him with his gaze. It was only right for him to apologize. He was a person who knew when to advance and when to retreat. During this period of time, he made the decision that he thought was the best. Seeing that the other party had apologized, Dabai finally smiled in satisfaction. He stuck out his tongue and said, Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? You should know that it's very uncomfortable for me to force myself to fart all the time. The male sword cultivator's lips twitched slightly. He did not say anything. He was thinking to himself that after this mission was over, he would definitely have a feast of dog meat. The battle between the flying dog and the flying sword ended with the flying dog's complete victory. Dabai no longer sped up as desperately as before. The snow-white tail propeller stopped spinning, and its speed gradually slowed down. After much difficulty, the male sword cultivator finally caught up to Dabai. He turned his curious gaze toward the cultivator riding the dog. He had been too complacent earlier and did not pay attention to the appearance of the cultivator. Now, he really wanted to take a good look and see what kind of person could raise such a despicable dog. Finally seeing the appearance of the cultivator riding the dog, the sword cultivator was first shocked. Then his mouth gaped open, and he was so shocked that he almost fell off his flying sword. Unlin, the sword cultivator exclaimed. Oh, you know me? Unlin smiled faintly. Yes. How could he not know her? I've looked up to you countless times in the 9 Prefectures magazine. The male sword cultivator's heart trembled with excitement as he spoke with a burning gaze. At the same time, he was filled with lingering fear. He had actually acted tough in front of a peerless sword immortal. They must be tired of living. Fortunately, Enlin had a good temper. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. Enlin's expression didn't change when he saw the arrogant false immortal instantly turning into a fanboy. He said calmly, flying is just one of the methods. There's no essential difference between flying on a sword and flying on a dog. You can't be too obsessed with these fancy things when you practice the sword. You have to study its inner workings and see through its essence. You have to understand why a sword is a sword and not look down on anything that isn't a sword. The male sword immortal's eyes lit up as if he had been enlightened. He bowed deeply in gratitude. Thank you, Sword Immortal Enlin, for your guidance. Listening to you is better than practicing the sword for 10 years. I've learned a lot. A mysterious smile appeared on Enlin's face. What he had just said was all nonsense. Who knew what this male cultivator had attained? This was how things were sometimes. When you achieved nothing, no one would listen to you no matter what you said. However, when you were a successful cultivator, even if you spouted some nonsense, countless people would view it as the truth. Even if you didn't have a single reason, the other party would be able to forcibly enlighten you. What business do you have with the dead spirit demonic land, Sword Immortal Enlin? If there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to tell me. The male sword cultivator was very eager to please Enlin. May I ask who you are? Enlin asked. I almost forgot to introduce myself. An awkward expression appeared on the male sword cultivator's face. I am an 18th generation disciple of the Heavenly Sword Sect, and my name is Sun Yuluo. Sun Yuluo seemed to be afraid that Enlin would alienate him, so he immediately added, Don't think too much about it. Even though I'm a disciple of the Heavenly Sword Sect, I have no animosity toward you. In fact, I really admire you. Enlin knew that Sun Yuluo was only saying this because Sun Yuluo was aware of the conflict between him and Lu Mingxian. He didn't really mind that, so he asked, Then why are you going to the Dead Spirit Demonic Land? Sun Yuluo replied, I'm going to the Dead Spirit Demonic Land to find an ancient sword that escaped from our sect. An ancient sword escaped? Enlin was astonished. Sun Yuluo nodded with a wry smile. The ancient sword is ownerless in the myriad sword tomb, and it suddenly nurtured a spirit before running away. Due to the fact that it's an En-type undead sword, we speculated that it would be heading toward the dead spirit demonic land. All of the sect disciples who don't have anything else to do have been mobilized. And Lin was enlightened upon hearing this. So the ancient sword had nurtured a spirit. Wasn't that the same as little Xie? It was extremely rare for an ancient sword to nurture a spirit. As the #1 sword sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Heavenly Sword sect was extremely interested in the nurturing of a spirit, so it wasn't strange for the entire sect to be mobilized. I'm going to the dead spirit demonic land in order to find a red mountain that spews blood every 10 years. Do you have any leads on this mountain? And Lin asked. A mountain that spews blood. Sun Yulua shuddered as his features paled. How could there be such a terrifying mountain? Are you telling me a ghost story? Please don't scare me, senior. And Lin could tell that Sun Yulua wasn't faking it. Could it be that he really was that afraid of ghosts? If he was that afraid of ghosts, wouldn't he be asking for it by going to the dead spirit demonic land? One had to realize that the dead spirit demonic land was renowned for being haunted, and Lin silently looked at the map in his storage ring. All he knew was that the blood-spewing mountain was located at the center of the dead spirit demonic land, but he would have to find the exact coordinates himself. I'll look for it myself. And Lin didn't have much hope in Sun Yulua anyway. Sun Yulua stared at Lin with a scorching light in his eyes. Senior, please take me with you. I'm willing to do anything for you. There's no need for that. You go on with your business, and Lin refused. Please don't. You're the sort of mortal I admire the most. Can you just let me stay by your side? We'll all be searching aimlessly in the dead spirit demonic land anyway. Sun Yulua pleaded, and Lin's lips twitched. What does your admiration of me have to do with whether I want to take you with me or not? There are countless people who admire me. Sun Yulua was rendered speechless. Besides, a hint of a smile appeared on Lin's face as he looked at Sun Yulua. You're a member of the Heavenly Sword sect, and the person you admire the most isn't Lu Mingxian. It's me. How dare you say something like that? Sun Yulua slapped his chest with tears in his eyes. Sort of mortal and Lin, I'm sincere. In my eyes, you're even more dazzling than the sect leader. How can I make you believe me? Dabai's body shuddered at the sight of this moving scene, and he couldn't help but ask, Big brotherin, should I speed up and shake him off? Woof. Before Lin had a chance to say anything, Sun Yulua extended a hand to stop him. Sort of mortal and Lin, I have a map of the dead spirit demonic land that I've explored. And Lin nodded with a smile. Little son, seeing as you're so sincere, you should come with me. It's always good to have another companion. Thank you, sort of mortal and Lin. Sun Yulua spoke with an excited expression. Goodbye. Chapter 12:22. Thus, Sun Yulua became a part of Lin's group. Sort of mortal and Lin. This is the map of the dead spirit demonic land. Sun Yulua handed the map to Lin in an extremely eager manner. Lin accepted the map to find that there were indeed many places that had already been explored, and even the dangers in those places had been marked out. However, there was still no information about the blood-erupting mountain. Let's go. We'll look around as we go, and Lin said. All right, sort of mortal and Lin. Sun Yulua nodded obediently, and Lin nodded with satisfaction. Aside from the fact that Sun Yulua had the map, there was another very important reason why he had allowed Sun Yulua to travel with him. Sun Yulua had been referring to him as sort of mortal and Lin with great sincerity, and Lin was very pleased, however. This comfort didn't last for very long. This was because Sun Yulua was a chatterbox. Sort of mortal and Lin, sort of mortal and Lin. How old were you when you first started cultivating in the sword? 19, my God. Didn't you cultivate in the sword from a young age? You've only been cultivating in the sword for a few years, and you're already so powerful. I've only been cultivating for a few years myself. Gasp. As expected of the #1 sword immortal on the Tai Chu continent. Your aptitude is truly astonishing. You're far too kind. Sort of mortal and Lin, sort of mortal and Lin. Who is your sword master? You sure have a lot to say. My master's name is Shitong. Shitong? What a special name. You must be an otherworldly mighty figure, right? That's right. He's very mysterious, very powerful, and very sly. Say, can you shut up? All right, all right. Sun Yulon nodded emphatically before asking, Sword Immortal and Lin, how do you temper your sword Dao? And Lin replied, I temper my sword Dao through my knife skills, which are basically chopping vegetables. After a while, I've mastered it. Sun Yulon was shocked. You're using a sword as a kitchen knife to temper your sword Dao? How terrifying. Could this be the legendary realm of returning to one's true self? By tempering the sword Dao through the most ordinary things, one can communicate with the principles of the world and comprehend the supreme grand Dao from the ordinary. Lin said, Little son, you are quite perceptive. Sword Immortal and Lin. Sword Immortal and Lin. What's the name of your companion sword? Why are you carrying it on your back? Is it to strengthen your connection with your life sword? Sun Yulua asked 3 questions in one go. Lin's face darkened. F***CK. Didn't I tell you to shut up? Sun Yulua recoiled slightly. Oh, after a while. Lin, scram. After traveling for a while, they finally saw a world without any signs of life. The land was black and barren, and the sky was dark and gloomy. From time to time, there would be a few strands of strange blue shadows moving about. At first glance, there would be a bone-chilling feeling. The dead spirit demonic land is up ahead. Be careful, everyone, and Lin cautioned. The dead spirit demonic land was the most perilous place in the ancient void state, so they had to be careful even in the outskirts. Sun Yulua swallowed nervously as he followed closely behind Lin. As soon as they entered the dead spirit demonic land, they were struck by a chilly sensation, as if something had frozen their bodies. Not long after that, a massive blue skull enshrouded in energy flew toward them before opening its cavernous mouth, as if it were going to swallow Lin and the others whole. Ah! Sun Yulua screamed, and he almost lost his footing on his flying sword. You dare to eat me? Die, woof. Bai stuck out his tongue and spat at the energy skeleton. A silvery white blade of wind sliced through the air and instantly sliced the skull into pieces. So powerful. Sun Yulua was still in a state of shock, and he let loose a cry of surprise. Not only is that attack extremely powerful, it also has the power to destroy one's consciousness. Dabai raised his snowy white tail with a smug expression. My domain is the silver divine wind, which can inflict both physical and spiritual damage. It's a piece of cake for me to take care of these ghosts. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. This was actually the reason why he had brought Dabai here. Not only was it convenient for him to deal with ghosts, but he was also quite sensitive to their presence, so perhaps he could find some unexpected clues. You're so bad *SS, big brother dog. Sun Yulua gave Lin a genuine thumbs up. As they traveled deeper and deeper into the dead spirit demonic land, the sky became darker and darker. After passing over a certain mountain, a woman's laughter suddenly erupted. It seemed to be the sound of a woman's laughter, and it was extremely eerie and terrifying. Sun Yulua's face paled. Big brother dog, did you hear something? A smile appeared on Dabai's face. Don't worry, it's all up to you. He swiped his paws toward 2 rotten rocks on the mountain as he spoke, upon which 2 silver claw projections tore the rocks apart amid a shrill cry of agony. The woman's laughter then disappeared. Big brother dog is so awesome, Sun Yulua exclaimed. You can see invisible ghosts. Dabai replied with a smug expression. I can see them with my domain. Sun Yulua was struck by a sense of deep veneration. And Lin looked at Sun Yulua with a speechless expression. Oi, what else have you been doing aside from screaming and being scared along the way? You're a soul formation, final stage, sword immortal. But I'm really scared. I've been scared of ghosts since I was a child. Sun Yulua stammered, as if he were very embarrassed. It's all right. Your big brother dog will look after you. Dabai patted Sun Yulua's head with a paw in consolation. Sun Yulua turned to Dabai with a grateful expression. And Lin, Sun Yulua wore a set of blue robes, and his features were quite delicate and handsome. His eyes were especially bright and piercing, and he was already a soul formation final stage cultivator at such a young age. From his appearance, he should be quite a powerful cultivator. So why was he so scared of ghosts? Everyone continued onward for a while longer, and they saw over 100 tall mountains along the way, but there were no signs of blood, erupting mountains, or ancient swords. They did encounter quite a few fairy ghosts, but none of them were very scary. It was just Sun Yulua who was scared out of his wits. "Look, there's a large city up ahead," Sun Yulua exclaimed. And Lin looked at the map. This city isn't marked on the map. This is an unexplored area, so the danger level is unknown. Woof. Dabai's eyes were glowing with excitement. "We're very close to the center of the dead spirit demonic land. Let's go and have a look." And Lin smiled. Are we really going? It feels so eerie." Sun Yulua was extremely scared. The sky had completely darkened by this point. It was clearly daytime, but this place was even darker than night. Gusts of sinister winds blew past, and there seemed to be countless ghostly shadows flashing past on the ground. And Lin ignored Sun Yulua and rode Dabai through the city gate. Along the way, all of the houses were in a dilapidated state, and the wooden doors creaked and groaned in the sinister winds. Dabai's eyes widened before his pupils suddenly contracted. A black figure had appeared up ahead. This was a bloody fatso. His upper body was completely bare, and his gory internal organs were exposed. There was even his own intestines trailing along the ground, and he was holding a butcher's knife in one hand while holding a fat, blood-stained but smiling head in the other. The head spoke in a faint voice. "Do you see where my head is?" Chapter 12:23. He was going to prove himself to Enlin. All of the heads in the air were reduced to wisps of smoke by the sword projection before they didn't even get a chance to let out a cry of anguish. The white sword projection broke through all obstacles before clashing with the butcher saber. The butcher was sliced in half, and blood and internal organs splattered all over the ground. The heads in his hands also fell to the ground, where they slowly decayed and decayed. An expression of despair appeared on Sun Yulua's face upon hearing Enlin's words. "Big brother, in this Sun Yulua, you really can't judge a book by its cover, woof," Dabai said. Sun Yulua was tossed toward the butcher by Enlin. It's pretty," Sun Yulua replied. Was this ghost an idiot? They didn't reap any special rewards, but they did encounter quite a few scary things, including an Een-type spirit herb. Sun Yulua was ecstatic, but Enlin and Dabai were completely disdainful. Dabai immediately understood their intentions and canceled his domain. A powerful silvery white wind blade swept through the air as he spoke before slashing toward the butcher. The butcher reacted extremely quickly, and his other saber came crashing down upon the wind blade. In order to prove himself, Sun Yulua was just about to draw his sword to attack the female ghost. Crack! The sword projection tore through the butcher's saber and sliced the butcher in half. Dabai's attack had been shattered by the butcher's saber. After that, Sun Yulua really did become a lot braver. No matter how scared he was, no matter how pale his face was, he would still raise his sword and slash at the monsters in front of him. No, he had seen a ghost, but he still couldn't see his own head. Normally, they were just munching on it as snacks. Sun Yulua hid behind Enlin and trembled uncontrollably. "It's so beautiful," Sun Yulua couldn't help but exclaim. Enlin and Dabai. Had Sun Yulua finally been seduced by a ghost? Sun Yulua finally couldn't help but scream as he pointed at the head in the butcher's hand. Head. All right, there's nothing else in this city. Let's go," Enlin said. For a moment, ghosts wailed and wailed, and a chilly wind blew. But I don't dare to unleash my sword whenever I see them. Sun Yulua's body trembled as he looked at the menacing heads pouncing toward him from afar. The head in Butcher's hand glanced at its headless body and flew into a rage. "Nonsense. I clearly didn't see anything. You have to pay the price for lying to me. I will chop off your head and put on my neck." At this moment, Dabai moved again. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Let's fight, woof." "Huh? So I can still cut." "Ugh. That's way too cowardly. How does one become a sword immortal?" Dabai looked puzzled. There was no mirror. Who the hell could see their own head? He strolled around the city. Sun Yulao was very excited, but he still offered the spirit herb to Enlin immediately. He didn't mind being ridiculed by Dabai, but he was very uncomfortable to be looked down upon by Enlin. However, the butcher had also been severely wounded, and he stumbled back a few steps. Blood and intestines splattered all over the ground, and a visible crack had appeared on his blood-stained butcher saber. Perhaps he's just an idiot who only knows how to use the sword, so it's normal for him to be afraid of ghosts. Enlin stroked his chin. Little Sun had grown up. Enlin was even more elated to hear this. Dabai dragged Enlin toward another city gate. Enlin and Dabai also let loose cries of surprise. Even though he was very scared, he still made a decision. Enlin and Dabai, I didn't. Sun Yulao shook his head like a rattle drum as he pointed at the butcher's hand with a trembling voice. The head really is in your hand. The woman raised her head to look at Sun Yulao. Her skin was as fair as snow, and there seemed to be gentle ripples in her eyes as she spoke in a gentle voice. Young master, was my dance beautiful? Bam! With Sun Yulua's help, Dabai was a lot more at ease. Enlin and the others were quite curious, and they flew over to the city wall to discover a woman in a red dress dancing gracefully like a seductive butterfly in the night. How dare you injure someone? I'm going to eat you. The butcher abruptly leaped into the air with a ferocious expression, and bursts of crimson power erupted from the head in his hand. See, little son, as long as you can overcome your fear, there's nothing you can't cut. Enlin was very elated. That's a spiritual attack, woof. Dabai immediately expanded his domain, and countless silvery white blades of wind revolved in the air to form a flowing wind defensive formation that could crush all intruders. The butcher couldn't even see his own head, and he glowered at Sun Yulao with an enraged expression. You lied to me. One head after another was reduced to nothingness by the silvery white blades of wind. Ah! Sun Yulao screamed in fear. An ethereal, pleasant song suddenly erupted from the tall city wall. The countless heads in the air became extremely excited, and they pounced toward Sun Yulao with their mouths wide open. It would be a miracle if anyone could see them. All of them had different appearances, and they were most likely vengeful spirits that had been killed by the butcher. All of them had sinister smiles on their faces as they bared their white fangs before pouncing toward Enlin and the others. Sun Yulao looked at the menacing, ghostly heads, and he finally let loose a shriek as he drew his sword. All of a sudden, heaven and earth flashed with a dazzling white light. Sun Yulao didn't even have a chance to celebrate before he immediately threw up again at the sight of this disgusting and terrifying scene. Energy exploded violently. Sun Yulua's face was flushed with embarrassment. Dude, it's not what you think. But this woman really isn't scary. Enlin and Dabai. Enlin couldn't help but say, why are you so useless? If you're scared, why don't you just kill all of them? What's the point of hiding? Oh, to think that it was able to block an attack from Dabai. This is an elite monster, Enlin teased. Sun Yulua's legs immediately gave out upon hearing this, and he immediately tried to flee atop his sword. A sword projection flashed through the air, slicing through countless ghosts and monsters. Unleash your sword, Enlin yelled. I did it. I did it. Sun Yulao murmured to himself as his body drifted to the ground, as if he couldn't believe that he had actually slain a ghost. A series of gigantic, bloody heads began to appear. Enlin then rewarded Sun Yulao with a spirit herb as a reward for his outstanding performance. Were spirit rank treasures very valuable? Head? The butcher turned around, and the eyes of the head in his hand widened as it surveyed its surroundings. Where? Where's my head? Why can't I see my own head? Sun Yulao gripped his snowy white, long sword tightly. Sword Immortal Enlin, I want to join the battle as well. I'll contribute my power to slay these ghosts. Enlin grabbed Sun Yulao and hurled him forward. Go! He didn't even know what to say. Dabai shot a glance at Sun Yulao. Aren't you afraid of ghosts? Why aren't you barking anymore? Woof! Enlin chuckled lightly. Looks like being afraid of ghosts also depends on one's looks. Little son, I was wrong about you. You F*** king beauty freak. Listen to me. Conquer the fear in your heart and unleash a sword strike. And Lin encouraged. Then, he gave the Bai a look of encouragement. Chapter 12:24. It had to be said that the woman in red's dance was indeed very beautiful. However, shouldn't Sun Yulao be screaming, "Ghost," before slaying this female ghost with his sword? Why would he be having conversation here? Sun Yulao was clearly obsessed with appearances. He wasn't scared of ghosts. He was scared of ugliness. And Lin and Dabai had misjudged Sun Yulao. A seductive smile appeared on the woman's face. "Would you like to see me dance one more time, sir?" Sun Yulao was just about to speak when Lin suddenly interjected, "Oi, shouldn't you be dancing at the dance studio? Why are you dancing on the wall?" Dabai looked at the woman in red. Why was Big Brother so insensitive? Shouldn't he be flirting with women at a time like this? Why was he bringing this up? If a young lady was beautiful, she would not only dance on the wall, but even if she danced on a grave, so what? Would a ghost be able to ask her why? However, much to Dabai's surprise, the woman in red was rooted to the spot upon hearing this. Why am I dancing on the wall?" She murmured to herself as her dim eyes suddenly lit up. "By the way, that man, he said that he would come back to marry me as soon as the battle against the divine dark Tao sect concluded." The woman's red sleeves danced in the wind as she looked up into the distance. "I'm standing on the wall to wait for him to come back. I'm dancing here so that he can see me. What do you think of my dance? Will he be attracted to it? Will he follow my dance and come back to find me?" Sun Yulao had tears and snot running down his face. "It's so touching." And Lin and Dabai's expressions darkened. What's touching? The fiancé that the woman was referring to was definitely not going to come back. Tens of thousands of years had passed since the era of the divine Dark Tao sect. Even if he didn't die in battle, he would die of old age. As for the woman on the wall, she had probably been sacrificed by a Tao integration stage mighty figure a long time ago. Only a wisp of her remnant soul remained here, waiting day after day. Sun Yulao, set her free. And Lin heaved a faint sigh. Sun Yulao's expression shifted drastically. Set her free? Why? She's so pitiful. Shouldn't we grant her some wishes before releasing her from the dead? Grant her wishes? And Lin rolled his eyes. For example, you could replace her fiancé and have an unfinished relationship with her? Sun Yulao blushed and didn't know what to say. Clang! He drew his sword and pressed it against the woman's neck. The woman in red stared blankly at Sun Yulao with grief, confusion, rage, and other emotions in her eyes. Young master, are you trying to kill me? Sun Yulao's sword-wielding hand trembled slightly. You died a long time ago, and so did your fiancé. You shouldn't have remained in this world. Two streams of tears flowed down from the eyes of the woman in red as she shook her head repeatedly. I don't believe you. He said he would come back. He will definitely come back. I've waited for so long. What can I do? Sun Yulao was just about to say something when an excruciating pain suddenly shot through his chest. Splat! Blood splattered through the air, staining his blue robe. Sun Yulao stared down at his chest with incredulity on his face. A red sleeve had transformed into a sharp spear that had punctured his chest. Little Sun! Lin and Dabai yelled in unison. Everything had happened far too abruptly, and even they had no time to react. You? Sun Yulao's eyes widened as he stared at the woman before him, and blood trickled from the corners of his lips. He. A sinister expression appeared on the woman's face. No one can stop me from waiting for his return. No one. If you want to kill me, then I'll kill you first. Right at this moment, a white figure descended from the sky. Wind's sword. And Lin suddenly flashed toward her, and his evil-slaying sword transformed into an inky black shadow that instantly punctured Yulao's chest. We didn't kill you because you're already dead. If you're dead, then you shouldn't exist in this world. Perhaps the person you're waiting for is waiting for you in another place. Really? Ripples appeared in the woman's eyes. Sword Immortal and Lin's words are so profound and reasonable, Sun Yulao said as he threw up a mouthful of blood. And Lin's expression darkened. Stop sucking up like this. You don't have to be so professional. An inky black sword projection erupted from the evil-slaying sword as it crashed relentlessly into Yulua's consciousness. Yulua's sleeve gradually returned to normal, and a relieved smile appeared on her face as she stared at Lin. Really? Is he really waiting for me in another place? It's been so long. What if he's forgotten about me? That's right. He's waiting for you in that place. If he's forgotten about you, you can dance for him, and he'll remember you. And Lin also smiled. This was the first time he had ever coaxed a ghost, and it went quite smoothly. The female ghost nodded upon hearing this, and she seemed to have thought things through. She took a few steps back and performed her final dance as she bade farewell to this world. Her gorgeous dance was enough to stun the entire city. So beautiful. And Lin and Dabai were entranced. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Sort of mortal and Lin, I think. I can still be saved. An intermittent and extremely painful voice rang out. And Lin and Dabai suddenly recalled that little son's heart had been stabbed. Little son, are you all right? And Lin hurriedly held onto the bleeding son Yulua with a concerned expression. I feel like I'm going to die. Tears flowed from son Yulua's eyes. And Lin immediately used his consciousness to assess son Yulua's condition. Thankfully, even though his heart had been ruptured, it was still salvageable. He immediately unleashed his evergreen technique to heal son Yulua's injuries. Everyone says that ugly ghosts are scary, but who would have thought that good-looking ghosts are even scarier? Son Yulua spat out a mouthful of blood with a remorseful expression. I'm treating your injuries. If you want to live, you'd better stop sighing right now. And Lin roared with rage. Son Yulua immediately fell silent as he stared at Lin like a rooster. Beautiful women are the source of trouble. I really can't be fooled by appearances. The more beautiful a woman is, the more evil they can be, son Yulua suddenly muttered to himself. And Lin, if he could, and Lin really wanted to abandon son Yulua and leave him to fend for himself. It was all thanks to Lin's extraordinary cultivation base that son Yulua was able to survive. Son Yul almost knelt down to Lin with an extremely grateful expression. Sword Immortal Lin, thank you very much for saving my life. I have no way to repay you, so I can only repay you with my body. Piss off. And Lin lashed out with a kick towards son Yulua. Son Yulua evaded, but he was still looking at Lin with a scorching gaze. Everyone exited the city and stared blankly at the inky black world around them. Thankfully, all of them had permanent directional indicators with them, so they didn't get lost. Where do we go next? Son Yulua asked. Dabai sniffed with his nose before replying, the northeast. Son Yulua was astonished. You can even smell ghosts. There's a lot of energy in that direction, so we can make a major discovery. Woof! Dabai exclaimed with excitement. All right, the northeast it is. And Lin had also detected an unusual aura in that direction, and he immediately set off on his dog steed. Chapter 1225. The red spider lily gently swayed in the darkness of the world. They continued to grow and spread, forming a boundless sea of flowers that glowed with a sinister red light, as if they were rubies in the darkness. At this moment, one violent collision after another was taking place within the sea of flowers. Bursts of dazzling sword intent pierced through the darkness before striking the sea of flowers, sending red flower petals flying through the air. The red spider lilies materialized a series of powerful crimson humans, all of whom pounced toward the figures in the sky, as if they were fearless warriors. The leader of the group was a man with bright eyes and a hat, and his sword was like a streak of white light piercing through the sun, reducing several powerful crimson humans to dust with a single sword strike. However, there seemed to be no end to the power within the sea of flowers, and crimson humans were constantly materializing before pouncing toward the cultivators in the sky. We can't go on like this. If we continue like this, we'll have to kill them forever. We should find a way to get out of this place, a male cultivator said as he swung his sword through the air. This flower formation is a naturally formed killing formation. It's like a venomous snake, and the more you try to escape, the more fearsome its retaliation becomes. The handsome man at the front said. Then what do we do? A beautiful female sword cultivator asked in a panicked voice as she turned toward the man at the front with anticipation and reverence in her eyes. The most powerful and reliable cultivator here was none other than this man. The man replied in a solemn voice, Find the flaws in the formation, then break it. That's our best option. Right at this moment, a white figure flew over from the distance at an extremely fast speed. Another cultivator has broken into the flower formation. Are these idiots trying to die? It's easy to get in this killing formation, but it's almost impossible to get out. Everyone's expression shifted upon seeing this. There was a man riding on the white figure, and there was also a man in a blue robe flying on his sword. They were all moving in an extremely graceful manner to evade the crimson humans within the sea of flowers. That's Sun Yulua, someone exclaimed. The man in a blue robe's expression also shifted upon seeing the 6 cultivators nearby. Brother Zhao Siming, Sister Shueshan, Sun Yulua is here. Hee. So what if he's here? Who in the sect would dare to get close to him now? He asked for it. The sect leader is already being very kind by not expelling him from the sect. That's right. Look it away from him so we don't incur his wrath. And Lin was also a little surprised by the disdain on everyone's faces. Why was Sun Yulua disliked by everyone in the sect? Even if his personality was a little special, it shouldn't be to the extent of being hated like this, right? Sun Yulua's expression didn't change in the slightest upon hearing this. Instead, he drew his sword and said, I'll help you. Sun Yulua's assistants, but none of them were. As one of the cultivators even sneered and said, Even senior brother Zhao Siming can't break this sea of flowers formation, so what's the point of you coming here to help? Another female sword cultivator chimed in. I'm afraid you still don't understand your situation, right? You've already strayed into the red spider lily sea killing formation. How to protect your own life is a problem. So what can you do to help us? We don't need your help. I don't recognize you as one of our sect's people. Sun Yulua pursed his lips, but he continued to swing his sword toward the crimson humanoid on the ground. Sun Yulua pursed his lips, but he still slashed his sword toward the crimson humanoid figures surging out of the sea of flowers on the ground. All of the cultivators finally had a chance to turn their attention to the strange cultivator riding on the Dubai dog. The cultivators who were busy fending off the sea of flowers finally had a chance to turn their attention to the strange cultivator riding a large white dog. All of the cultivators finally had a chance to turn toward the strange cultivator riding on the Dubai dog. Some of them couldn't help but feel their legs tremble and fall from the sky. And Lin? My God, it really isn't Lin. At this moment, even Zhao Siming's expression shifted as he turned toward Lin. It really isn't Lin. Why is he here? However, contrary to what Lin had imagined, everyone seemed to be even more enraged at the sight of Lin. Who would have thought that Sun Yulua would be able to hook up with Lin? Tui, the sect leader shouldn't have allowed that piece of trash to remain in the sect. Is he here with Lin to mock us? What a detestable man. Lin was instantly astonished. What's with all this hatred? It was as if he and Sun Yulua had made some sort of secret deal. Little son, you have to explain what's going on, Lin said. A wry smile appeared on Sun Yulua's face upon hearing this. Our Heavenly Sword sect held a Sword Heart demonstration event not long ago, and all of our disciples were required to state which sword immortal they admire the most. Most of the disciples chose Sect Master Lu Mingxian or the Grand Elder, but I'm different. I chose you. He turned to Lin as he spoke. Lin was rooted to the spot, and even Dubai was completely dumbstruck. That explained why the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect were so hostile towards Sun Yulu. Lu Mingxian had been kicked out of the 4-9 Immortal sect, and that was huge news across the entire Kingdom of the 9 States. Wasn't he insane to say something like that in the Heavenly Sword sect? It was already a miracle that Lu Mingxian hadn't slain Sun Yulua. As such, Sun Yulua wasn't just sucking up to Lin when he said that he admired the most sword immortal. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a hardcore fan. Are you trying to get yourself killed by doing this in the sect? Can't you just brush them off a little? And Lin took a deep breath. Sun Yulong immediately shook his head with a serious expression. The Sword Heart demonstration event is the heart of the Sword Tao. If I were to say something that goes against my sword heart would be obscured. I will say whatever I want to say and not go against my heart. That's what I stand for. And Lin and Dabai were filled with deep veneration. They were paying their respects to the #1 warrior of the Heavenly Sword Sect, Sun Yulong. The 6 Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators were both enraged and cautious upon seeing Lin's arrival. If it weren't for the fact that they knew of Lin's terrifying combat prowess, they would most likely have already engaged him in battle. And Lin naturally wasn't going to bully his juniors. They were only a return to Void Initial Stage Cultivator and 5 Soul Formation Stage Cultivators, so they were all weaklings. As long as they didn't piss him off, he was quite willing to negotiate with them. That and Lin is just standing there silently. He's clearly waiting for us to make a fool out of ourselves. Not only that, but we have to be careful in case he suddenly attacks us. He really is just as arrogant and shameless as the rumors say. All of the cultivators discussed among themselves in low voices with rage. And Lin, all right, he had initially wanted to help them. Now, he was just going to watch them make a fool out of themselves. Chapter 12:26. And Lin rode atop Dabai and stood silently in mid-air, observing the situation unfolding before his eyes. All of the other cultivators were doing their best to keep the sea of flowers at bay. As soon as they moved, the sea of flowers would become even more ferocious. Sun Yulong didn't make much of a difference after joining the battle against the sea of flowers. This and Lin sure is shameless. He hides behind us and enjoys our protection, but he never takes the initiative to fight. The woman by the name of Shui Shan spoke with displeasure as she waved her long sword through the air to freeze the oncoming crimson humanoids. All of the other cultivators were also enraged, but they couldn't bring themselves to lash out at Lin, so they could only turn their furious gazes towards Sun Yulong. All of the other cultivators were also enraged, but they couldn't bring themselves to lash out at Lin, so they could only turn their furious gazes towards Sun Yulong. Sun Yulong's expression was quite dejected. However, he didn't say anything and continued to help everyone keep the sea of flowers at bay. He wasn't going to ask for Lin's help either, as he knew that he didn't have the right to do so. I found a flaw in the slaughter formation. Return to Void Initial Stage, Zhao, Simon suddenly spoke. He took a step in the air and rushed to the area 1,000 meters away. Countless crimson flower petals flew toward him like flying daggers, but he was not fearful in the slightest as he drew his long sword and unleashed a dazzling sword projection. The sword projection sliced through the crimson flower petals and tore a trench several kilometers in length into the sea of flowers. Boom! The entire earth tremored violently. The slaughter formation suddenly fell silent, and the red spider lily also stopped releasing crimson humanoids. Everyone's sense of peril was instantly alleviated. This is great. I knew Brother Zhao, Simon, would be able to find a way around this. What's the point of Sun Yulong coming here? He's just here to make things difficult for us. That's right. He's brought Lin here, and we have to keep our guard up against Lin. He's with Lin now. Isn't that a crime of betrayal? He could have just joined the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Why would he stay at our Heavenly Sword Sect? The cultivators were either overjoyed or disdainful and contemptuous. And Lin felt that they were very bold. Were they really not afraid that he would hammer them to death just because he didn't like them? Sun Yulong was surprisingly calm, as if none of this was talking about him. Xiao Sun, your temper is way too good. You don't even have the slightest change in your emotions when people talk about you like that. Woof. Dabai was also shocked. A faint smile appeared on Sun Yulong's face. What other people think of me doesn't affect my ability to eat, sleep, or practice my swordsmanship. Why should I care about these things and waste my time? And Lin and Dabai were in awe again. Not only was this Mr. Sun Yulong very stubborn, but he was also very Buddha-like. It would be a pity if such a Buddha-like cultivator didn't go to the Western Paradise. Zhao Siming shot a cold glance at Sun Yulaw before instructing the other 5 disciples. The danger in the formation has been eliminated. Let's get out of here as soon as possible. Yes, senior disciple brother. The 5 disciples replied in unison, and Lin couldn't help but chuckle. Is the danger really gone? Everyone ignored Lin and turned to look at Zhao Siming. Zhao Siming turned to Lin with furrowed brows as he pointed toward the north. The Yin energy there is quite abundant, so the ancient sword might be in that direction. Everyone hit it off and began to fly towards the north. Right at this moment, the entire sea of flowers suddenly began to tremor. Billions of red spider lilies twisted their waists and swayed their bodies at the same time. The crimson color of the flowers became even more dazzling, and a peculiar tune began to play. Extreme crimson, a melody that could even be described as madness. Ah! One of the male cultivators covered his ears in agony as his eyes gradually became crimson, clearly having been corrupted by the peculiar atmosphere. How could this be? Shueshan's gorgeous features also turned deathly pale as an extremely dangerous feeling engulfed her entire body. The so-called flaw in the killing formation that your beloved senior disciple brother found wasn't actually a flaw. It was merely a sensitive part of the formation. Instead, he awakened all of the dormant red spider lilies. Do you understand your situation now? And Lin spoke with a buoyant smile. He had the divine inspection technique, so he could clearly see the characteristics of the killing formation. All of the cultivators' expressions shifted upon hearing this. Zhao Siming's expression also became extremely dark. Right at this moment, the red spider lilies materialized more crimson humanoids. The auras of these bloodmen were even more terrifying than the bloodmen from before. Not only that, but the bloodmen that were formed from the sea of flowers around them were now moving as well. There weren't just a few dozen or a few hundred crimson humanoids. There were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Countless crimson humanoids appeared and flew into the sky, surrounding everyone in the center. A female sword cultivator's legs had already turned to jelly at the sight of the countless crimson humanoids, and she collapsed onto her flying sword with tears streaming down her face. It's over. It's really over this time. D***M in it. If it weren't for the fact that this killing formation even restricted information, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Don't worry, we still have Brother Zhao Siming. His sword techniques are superb, so he'll definitely be able to keep the crimson humanoids at bay. A male cultivator consoled. When everyone turned to look at Zhao Siming, they discovered that his features were already deathly pale, and his hands were trembling as he gripped his long sword tightly. He was clearly trying his best to maintain his composure, but he was unable to disguise the shock and despair in his heart. Brother Zhao Siming, stop talking and face reality. There are so many crimson humanoids here. Even 10 Brother Zhao Siming won't be able to do anything. Even that and Lin wouldn't be able to do anything. Shueshan bit down on her lower lip and glanced at Lin as she spoke in a cold voice. All of the cultivators turned to look at Lin with complicated expressions. There was awkwardness, shame, and a hint of indescribable anticipation. Why are you all looking at me? You're not imagining that I'm going to save you, are you? Didn't you tell me earlier that I'm a shameless, despicable bastard who stands on the sidelines and watches you make a fool of yourselves? You're right. That's exactly who I am. And Lin clenched his fists with a smile on his face. So good luck to all of you. And Lin spoke in an extremely despicable manner. All of the cultivators trembled with rage, but there was nothing they could do. As sword immortals, they were all prideful and unyielding sword immortals. They simply couldn't lower their heads to beg Lin for help, especially when Lin had a huge conflict with sect leader Lu Mingxian. This was even more impossible. Let's not pin our hopes on someone like him. And Lin must be scared to death as well. We have to rely on ourselves. That's right, we have to think of a way. There must be another way. Right at this moment, countless crimson humanoids began to pounce toward them. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators were instantly plunged into dire straits. Chapter 12:27. Exclamations sounded one after another as the disciples of the Heavenly Sword Sect looked behind them with complicated expressions. He saved Senior's sister Shueshan, Senior brother. The disciples looked at Zhao, siming with red eyes. There were so many of them that it was hopeless. They could only keep swinging their swords. But in the next instant, the bloody man froze on the spot. The stronger the master's sword intent, and the higher the realm, the more terrifying the power of the flying sword. Lin, Shueshan let loose a cry of surprise. Easy for you to say. Don't run if you have the ability. Who doesn't know how to talk? There are hundreds of thousands of ferocious blood people. If you don't run, no matter what sword technique you use, won't you still be killed by this killing formation? Another disciple spoke up. A hero saving a damsel in distress. Tens of thousands of golden flying swords converged into a surging river. Sai, it's all because of my obsessive-compulsive cooking. Even when I'm killing a small monster, I have to cut it into cubes and cut it evenly. A helpless sigh rang out. Before the crowd could react to what it was, an extremely terrifying sword will instantly envelop the entire area. However, there were also times when everyone was tired. Facing the endless attacks of the Bloodmen, after killing over 10,000 Bloodmen, they began to show flaws. Just as Shueshan was trying to figure out what was going on, the Crimson Man suddenly split open, and his body was sliced into over 1,000 extremely well-proportioned pieces before scattering down from the sky. The terror of this killing formation already far exceeded their imaginations. This was the only thought in her heart. It was also at this moment that Zhao, siming, suddenly slit open his own wrist. Blood dripped onto the blade of his sword, and the sword intent soared into the sky as his aura skyrocketed to the return to void intermediate stage. The bloody men were still pouncing at them, but before they could get close, they were strangely divided into thousands of pieces, none of them able to get close to them. Sun Yulao was once again excluded by the Heavenly Sword Sect disciples, but he was still slaying the crimson figures with all his might while looking for opportunities to destroy the red spider lilies down below. Without any hesitation, the 5 disciples flew towards the passageway that the sword light had passed through. Even Lin couldn't help but look up to Zhao siming. "It's over, Senior's sister Shueshan," a disciple cried out in alarm. Zhao Siming used a secret technique to increase his cultivation and open a path for everyone. This place was the closest to the periphery of the blood array, so it was the best escape route. Although the sword formation was very powerful and could temporarily block the attacks of the Bloodmen, it was not able to withstand the attacks of the Bloodmen. Form the sword formation. All right, I'll show you what a true sword immortal is like. And Lin laughed heartily as he took out a blue necklace from his storage ring and tossed it into the air. This was a dangerous move. If they couldn't find a way to break the formation, they could only risk their lives and forcibly leave the formation. Yuan Tian. It was hard to say whether they could successfully escape. Should they face them head-on? He must be tired of living for too long. With the bloodstained sword in hand, he slashed at the place wherein Lin had come from. "What are you doing? Why don't you escape with them?" Zhao Siming suddenly shouted. Sword chi filled the sky, flying swords forming a sea. In an instant, densely packed, golden flying swords leaped out of the blue hole. But now, from the blue hole, what they felt was an entire ocean. The crimson figures were extremely ferocious, and even though the sword formation was extremely powerful, they continued to attack the sword formation. "Stop running. As sword immortals, you should press forward and never retreat." Lin's indifferent voice sounded. The 6 sword cultivators stood in a special formation, and a peculiar sword formation began to take shape. A male cultivator's abdomen was torn open by a crimson figure, and blood splattered through the air. Sword burial necklace. An offensive weapon forged with sword-intent stars as its core. It can absorb dead flying swords into the necklace and release them after storing energy. An extremely powerful sword projection pierced through the sky, slicing all of the crimson figures within a radius of over 10,000 meters into crimson mist. A temporary safe path appeared in front of everyone. An endless stream of crimson figures surged toward them with a dangerous aura. "They're not dead?" Shueshan's expression shifted. If the sword projections they had unleashed earlier were a drop of water, then Enlin has made his move. A disciple said angrily, "Don't run. If you can't beat them, why don't you run? Are you going to die?" As Enlin's voice fell, the blue necklace transformed into a blue hole. They were going to die in this terrifying place. He sat on Bai's back, resting his chin on his hand as he looked at the struggling heavenly sword sect cultivators. "Don't worry about me. I can protect myself." Sun Yulong also stayed behind to clear a path for his fellow sect members. Zhao Siming let loose a loud roar. Shueshan let loose a muffled groan, but she still persevered. The red spider lilies on the ground began to dance even more violently as the crimson figures pounced toward them with even more ferocity. This was a bloodthirsty place, and any living being that tried to escape would be attacked even more ferociously. In less than a minute, all of the 6 cultivators had been wounded aside from the return to Void Stage Zhao Siming. Sun Yulong had also sustained quite a few injuries, but he was still persevering. A dozen or so crimson figures pounced toward the tall and slender woman at the same time, and they were so fast that they were like a series of red afterimages. However, one of the crimson figures was suddenly struck by a sword, and it let loose a sharp wail. Meanwhile, Enlin had unleashed his holy vermilion flame to protect himself, and the crimson figures that were pouncing toward him were all reduced to wisps of smoke before they even got within 100 meters of him. A series of surging rivers converged to form a boundless golden ocean. She could see that the crimson figure had a strange suit of armor around its body, and her sword was only able to inflict a small gash on the armor, but it was unable to kill the crimson figure. Shueshan knew that this was because the speed at which Enlin was unleashing his sword strikes had already exceeded the limits of her perception. Shueshan's expression shifted slightly, and she slashed a dazzling net of swords through the air, slicing the crimson figures into several pieces. "Run! I'll cover you!" Zhao Siming roared. Not long after that, another crimson figure pierced through the layers of sword projections before slashing a ghastly gash into Shueshan's long, fair leg. A male figure had appeared before her. It was none other than Enlin. The situation had become extremely perilous, and even Zhao Siming had been injured in the process of trying to buy time for the other disciples to escape. All of the heavenly sword sect cultivators fled for their lives with all their might. "There are too many crimson figures to kill. Forgive me for being blunt, but all of the crimson figures here aren't even enough for me to kill with a single strike." All of the crimson figures that approached the sword formation were sliced in half by the sharp sword intent. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. There were currently over 10 million death swords within the sword burial chain, and each and every one of them had been nourished by Lin's sword intent, as well as his divine weapon origin chi, thereby turning them into pure gold. The crimson figures cackled soundlessly as their hands transformed into scythes that descended mercilessly. Shueshan's eyes widened in that instant, and she didn't even have time to evade. There was no end in sight to the crimson figures, and the rich blood energy and death energy in the air made it difficult to breathe. Chapter 1228. All of the heavenly sword sect disciples stared at this astonishing scene. The golden flying swords descended like a sea of light, slicing through the air toward the powerful crimson figures down below. These flying swords were imbued with divine weapon origin energy, and they were able to slice the crimson figures in half with ease. There were indeed many crimson figures, but the number of golden flying swords struck despair into the hearts of the crimson figures. All of the crimson figures were sliced into pieces by the golden flying swords before being engulfed by the boundless golden flying swords. Not only that, but the flying swords also descended upon the earth, pulverizing all of the red spider lilies on the ground below. Boom! The earth tremored violently. The heavenly sword sect disciples felt as if they could see a vast expanse of golden light falling from the sky, engulfing the crimson figures and crushing the crimson flowers before transforming the earth into a sea of golden swords crack. An explosive sound erupted throughout heaven and earth, as if something had completely shattered. Zhao Siming's pupils contracted, and Lin broke through the sea of flowers, killing formation with such brute force. What kind of terrifying power is this? He didn't need to study the veined patterns or flaws of the formation. He had used absolute power to break through this terrifying natural killing formation. The boundless earth below was riddled with ravines torn open by sword chi, and it had completely changed. The flying swords began to fly back into the blue spatial hole. The spatial hole twisted and warped before reverting back into a blue necklace. How weak! And Lin shook his head and stowed the necklace away before turning to everyone else. He discovered that all of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were looking at him with astonishment on their faces, as if they had yet to recover from what they had just witnessed. So powerful. Shueshan couldn't help but mutter. The disciple who had said that Enlin would be killed by the formation, even if he didn't run away, was so ashamed that he didn't even dare to look Enlin in the eye. He wanted nothing more than to find a hole to crawl into. As for all of the other disciples, their expressions were extremely complex. There were expressions of shame, admiration, and gratitude. After all, Enlin had just saved their lives no matter what. "Thank you," a disciple said softly. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face, and no one knew whether he had heard this or not. He turned to the blood-stained Sun Yulao and tossed a high-ranked spirit pill at him with a smile. "Hey, stop spacing out. Your performance just now wasn't bad. Even if your fellow disciples insulted you and looked down on you, you still dared to face the terrifying, blood-covered figures and created a path for them to live. This spirit pill is your reward." Only then did Sun Yulao come to his senses, and he accepted the spirit pill before looking at Enlin with a scorching expression. "Sword Immortal Enlin, you were so cool just then." He admired Enlin very much, but when he saw Enlin in action, he deeply understood that his previous admiration was not wrong. As expected of that pretentious Enlin, is this the Sword Immortal that Sun Yulao admires the most? Zhao Siming murmured. Aside from sect leader Lu Mingxian, there's probably no one in the Heavenly Sword sect who can match up to such pure and profound sword intent. He could sense something extraordinary from the divine weapon origin energy. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were still rooted to the spot, at a complete loss for what to do. There was a hint of shame in their eyes as they looked at Enlin, and they were even more ashamed of themselves as they looked at Sun Yulao. They looked down on Sun Yulao because the person he admired was Enlin, and they had even insulted him. However, Sun Yulao had risked his life to save them in their time of peril. Not only that, but Sun Yulua's idol, Enlin, had also turned the tables with his invincible might and saved them. Their faces had been slapped swollen. Enlin and Sun Yulao didn't say anything, but to be honest, anyone who had any sense of shame in their hearts would feel extremely ashamed at this moment. "Let's go now that we're out of danger." Enlin got onto Debai's back again. "Wait for me, Sword Immortal Enlin." Sun Yulao hurriedly gave chase. The 6 Heavenly Sword sect disciples looked on at Enlin and Sun Yulua's departing figures. "They're leaving just like that? I thought they were going to mock us. Don't you think that not saying anything is the best form of mockery?" Sigh. Zhao Siming heaved a faint sigh. "So be it. Let's hurry up and find the ancient sword that escaped from our sect." All of the disciples nodded upon hearing this. Their top priority now was to find the ancient sword. At the same time, Enlin suddenly stopped on Debai's back. "What is it, Sword Immortal Enlin?" Sun Yulao asked. "This is the core of the Flower Slaughter Formation." A white light flashed through Enlin's eyes as he spoke. "Didn't you already destroy the Flower Slaughter Formation? Why are we going to the core of the formation?" Sun Yulao was still perplexed. "What do you think a naturally formed formation would rely on to maintain the operation of such a terrifying killing formation? Is it just a bunch of red spider lilies?" Enlin slowly descended to the ground. In contrast, Sun Yulua's eyes lit up with excitement. Enlin made a grabbing motion with his hand, and the soil on the ground began to crack open. Following a resounding boom, a crimson light erupted forth, and an object that resembled a stamen floated out before landing in Lin's hand. It exuded extremely terrifying energy fluctuations as well as a strange, depraved sound. Divine Inspection Technique. Infernal Blood Divine Flower. After being nurtured for tens of thousands of years with boundless blood and boundless resentment, the flower core has naturally formed. This is a divine rank material. A smile appeared on Lin's face. Another divine rank material. What a steal. Lead the way, Dabai, and Lin instructed. Dabai's astonishing sense of smell was like a divine tool in this place. Big brother, I can smell something very stimulating in that direction. Woof. Dabai flew toward a certain direction with an excited expression. Sun Yuluo looked at the map with a nervous expression. That direction is an area that's already been explored on the map. White Goose City is marked as the most dangerous place. They had already entered the core region of the Dead Spirit demonic land, so they had to be very careful. Don't worry, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Besides, the map says that there's a tall mountain in that direction. Let's see if that's the Blood Eruption Mountain. And Lin was quite nonchalant. Not long after that, an extremely grand city appeared before their eyes. It was a place of ruin and desolation, and there was only bone-chilling cold winds blowing relentlessly through the air. Sun Yuluo trembled uncontrollably as he grabbed onto Dabai's tail and flew over the city from above. All of a sudden, he caught sight of a child in a dark yellow linen robe who was drawing circles on the ground. He. The child's silly laughter reverberated throughout the silent environment. And Lin used his divine sense to detect the child's power level, but he was unable to ascertain the child's power level. Dabai, let's go down and have a look, and Lin instructed. Dabai stuck out his tongue before carefully landing behind the child. Chapter 1229. For a child to suddenly appear in such an empty city and draw circles on the sidewalk, there was something amiss no matter how one looked at it. Sun Yuluo bore in Lin's teachings in mind, and he knew that as a sword immortal, he had to face the fear in his heart and overcome it. Thus, he stood in front of Lin and Dabai and unsheathed his snowy white, long sword with trembling hands. He pointed it at the child on the ground and scolded in a cold voice, as if he was trying to bolster his courage. You little brat, why are you scrawling on the ground? Lin and Dabai. Was there something wrong with this opening line? The child's hands abruptly faltered. He slowly stood up and turned around. To his surprise, the little boy in the dark yellow linen garments had a particularly delicate and handsome face. Big brother. The little boy's ethereal voice was tinged with a hint of hoarseness. Sun Yuluo shuddered with fright. Don't come any closer. If you move again, I'll kill you. All of a sudden, the surrounding space fell silent. The little boy stood rooted to the spot like a wooden statue, not even blinking his eyes. It was as if everything had stopped moving. Sun Yuluo was given a massive fright by this scene. The little boy really didn't move after saying that he would kill him? Was he really that cooperative? Right at this moment, the little boy's eyes began to bulge. Splat! Blood splattered through the air as a pair of eyeballs rolled onto the ground. There were 2 holes on his face, from which tears of blood flowed relentlessly. Oh my eyeballs are falling out. A peculiar smile suddenly appeared on the little boy's face. Sun Yuluo's heart seemed to have stopped beating in that instant, and his mouth gaped open as he stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before his eyes. Sun Yuluo finally let loose a scream, and he almost dropped his sword as he stumbled back in retreat while holding on to Dabai tightly. Let go of me, you coward! I'm going to strangle you to death, woof! Dabai roared with rage. And Lin was also given a fright by the little boy's actions. Even though it was a little thrilling, it shouldn't have reacted as violently as Sun Yuluo, right? The screams were in the hundreds of decibels, and the sound waves could form shock waves. Even the little boy whose eyeballs had popped out of his sockets was startled by Sun Yuluo's reaction, and he forgot how to speak. Hee, this is so fun. The little boy seemed to have found some kind of fun toy, and he picked up the eyeballs and put them back on his face before looking at Sun Yuluo with excitement on his face. Sun Yuluo felt like he had been mocked by a ghost, and an enraged expression appeared on his face as he slashed down with his sword. Eat this. The sword light was dazzling, and its sharpness arrived in an instant. The little boy swung a hand through the air with a wide grin before slashing it towards Sun Yulua's longsword. Bang! Crack! Right before Sun Yulua's astonished eyes, his longsword clashed with the little boy's hand, and the sound of metal clashing erupted. Sparks flew as the longsword was snapped in half. How could this be? My sword is a spirit tool. Sun Yulua's eyes widened, and he was unable to react for a moment. A hint of excitement flashed through the little boy's eyes, and he suddenly opened his mouth, upon which a crimson tongue shot forth like a venomous viper before instantly wrapping itself around Sun Yulua's neck. A sticky and slippery sensation imbued with extremely terrifying power swept through Sun Yulua's entire body, and he screamed again, "Sword Immortal and Lin, save me! Why is this tongue so long and slippery? It's so scary. Wah!" Sun Yulua's legs gave out from under him, and tears welled up in his eyes as the little boy's tongue wound tightly around his neck. He slashed at the little boy's long tongue with his broken sword, only to find that no matter how hard he tried, it was as if he were slashing at the hardest metal in the world. He. The little boy grinned at Sun Yulua, as if he was very amused by Sun Yulua's terrified expression. And Lin and Dabai realized that things were not as simple as they appeared, and they immediately charged toward the little boy. "Stop, Woof! Piss off!" Dabai and Lin sprang into action at the same time. The silver wind blade domain swept toward the little boy in a frenzy, and Lin also lashed out with his evil slaying sword, and an inky black sword projection pierced through the heavens. The little boy's expression shifted, and he evaded Lin's attack with a ghostly movement technique. At the same time, his tongue was still wrapped around Sun Yulua's neck, unwilling to let go. Sun Yulua's neck was completely constricted, and his tongue hung out of his mouth as his eyes rolled over into the back of his head. He was unable to even breathe, and he looked as if he were about to die. Dabai's domain struck the little boy's body, but it was unable to harm him. "Let go of Sun Yulua!" A loud roar suddenly erupted in the distance. A few blue-robed figures began to appear before charging toward the little boy. Those are the 6 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect? Why are they here? What a coincidence! And Lin's expression shifted slightly. An impatient expression appeared on the little boy's face as he spat on the ground several times in quick succession. The saliva transformed into sharp crimson swords that pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. "Look out!" Zhao Siming yelled in warning as he positioned his sword before his chest to defend himself. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions erupted in the sky. Terrifying sword power blasted all of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples flying again. "No one can save him. He's mine." The little boy chuckled. Sun Yulua was on the verge of tears upon hearing this, and he roared with indignation. "There are so many people here. Why do you have to target me?" The little boy cocked his head to the side. "Because you're afraid of ghosts." Sun Yulua's mouth gaped open with a dumbstruck expression. Was it because he was afraid of ghosts that ghosts liked to bully him? This was way too much. And Lin slashed his sword toward the little boy again, and light suddenly flashed from the inky black blade of his sword. Immediately afterward, an extremely adorable little girl in a black dress with a chubby little face appeared. Little Xie pounced toward the little boy even faster than Lin, and her little hands shot forth like lightning to grab onto the little boy's tongue with excitement on her face. Ah! The little boy was struck by a sense of fear for the first time in his life. He immediately released Sun Yulua's tongue and tried to retract his own, only to find that little Xie had a death grip on his tongue, and he was completely unable to struggle free. A pure smile appeared on little Xie's face, and there was a hint of curiosity and excitement in her eyes. A ferocious expression appeared on the little boy's face, and he instantly bit through his long tongue. After his tongue was severed, he retreated at an extremely fast speed. His speed was like a flash of lightning. Little Xie faltered for an instant before looking up at the little boy's fleeing figure. She knew that she wouldn't be able to catch up to him, and she puffed up her cheeks in anger. Ah! Another cry of surprise erupted. Little Xie turned around to find Sun Yulua pointing at her with a pale face and trembling uncontrollably. What the hell is this thing that suddenly appeared? Is it a higher-level ghost? Save me. Sword Immortal and Lin. Save me. Little Xie and Lin. Chapter 1230. This idiot is calling me a ghost. Can I kill him? Little Xie asked expressionlessly. Calm down, Little Xie. He's just been scared silly, and he'll recover after a while. And Lin tried to dissuade Little Xie as he held onto her hand in a tight grip. He knew that with Little Xie's explosive temper, there was a good chance that she would attack Sun Yulua if he didn't stop her. Wait, you're calling her Little Xie? Do you two know each other? Sun Yulua's eyes widened. Little Xie glared at Sun Yulua with a cold expression and didn't say anything. At this moment, Zhao Siming and the others also arrived beside Sun Yulua, and they looked at the adorable little girl with curiosity on their faces. Of course I know her. And Lin waved the sword in his hand with a smile. This is the sword spirit of my evil slaying sword, and her name is Little Xie. Everyone instantly fell silent upon hearing this. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators stared blankly at Little Xie with wide eyes. Sword spirit. She's a sword spirit that has successfully attained a spirit body. Heavens, our Heavenly Sword Sect only has 2 swords that have transformed into true sword spirits, and both of them are in the hands of the Sect Master and the Grand Elder, if we don't count the sword spirit that escaped. Those swords took countless years to nurture, but who would have thought that Lin would attain a sword spirit at such a young age? And it's such an adorable sword spirit. I'm going crazy with jealousy. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators stared at Little Xie with scorching light in their eyes, and some of them were even swallowing uncontrollably. What was the biggest dream of a sword cultivator? Aside from cultivating, the biggest dream of 99% of sword cultivators was to possess a sword spirit. A sword spirit was more valuable than any beast pet or treasure, and it was a symbol of a sword cultivator's identity. Little Xie tugged on Lin's hand as she spoke in a childish voice. These people are even more disgusting than you are. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators. And Lin, little girl, don't you know that you just set off a map cannon? Sun Yulua made his way over to Lin with an excited expression. Sword Immortal Lin, your sword spirit is so adorable. I knew it. My idol is the best. Not only does he have a sword spirit, but the sword spirit is also so cute and pleasing to the eye. The coward frantically flattered Lin, then changed the topic. Your sword spirit is so cute. Can I hug it? Scram! Little Xie immediately yelled before Lin had a chance to say anything. A dazzling black sword projection erupted from Little Xie's palm before striking Sun Yulua's chest. Sun Yulua felt as if he had been struck by a sledgehammer, and his chest caved in. His body felt as if it had been torn apart, and he threw up a mouthful of blood as he flew back over a kilometer. When the other 6 disciples of the Heavenly Sword Sect saw this scene, they couldn't help but gasp again. This sword spirit really dared to attack them. Didn't they know each other? Lin massaged his brows with a speechless expression. Little Xie even dared to attack her master, so it was only natural that Sun Yulua would be attacked. It was his own fault for asking for trouble. Everyone else wanted to touch and pinch Little Xie's chubby cheeks because of how adorable Little Xie was, but he wanted to hug Little Xie. It was no wonder that he was attacked. What pure sword intent! Zhao Siming's expression shifted again as he sensed an extremely pure sword intent from Little Xie's attack. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect disciples repressed their thoughts and didn't dare to do anything else. Even Sun Yulua, who was so close to Lin, had been slain by the sword spirit. How could they dare to do anything else? Say, why are you here? Lin turned toward Zhao Siming and the others. Zhao Siming faltered slightly, and he seemed to be a little hesitant. Shuishan pulled out a blue roulette before explaining. We're following the needle of this roulette, and it can point to a place with the densest Yin energy nearby, and Lin was enlightened upon hearing this. This was indeed the place with the densest Yin energy nearby. The Heavenly Sword Sect's ancient sword was an Yin-type sword, and it liked to go to places with dense Yin energy. This roulette could point to places with dense energy, so it could be said that it was the best tool for finding ancient swords. However, Enlin wasn't going to be envious of them. Dabai's nose was much better than the roulette. I'm sorry, sword spirit little Xia. I shouldn't have said something like that. Sun Yao clasped a hand over his chest as he flew over from the distance with a deathly pale expression. Little Xia pouted slightly upon hearing this, but she didn't say anything before jumping back into the evil-slaying sword. Seeing as we've taken care of everything here, let's keep going. Enlin rode on Dabai and rose into the air again before flying toward the inky black mountain in the distance. He was looking for the blood eruption mountain, so he naturally wasn't going to stay in the city for too long. Shueshan pulled out her roulette to find that the needle of the roulette was also pointing toward the mountain up ahead. She looked at Zhao, Siming, and the others, and they could all see the awkwardness in each other's eyes. Thus, the 6 Heavenly Sword Sect disciples also flew toward the mountain up ahead. Enlin's head throbbed as he looked at the people behind him. Shueshan and the others were also quite dejected. They really wanted to explain in a loud voice that they really weren't following Enlin. The needle of the roulette was pointing in that direction, and they really couldn't do anything about it. The mountain outside the city was over 10,000 meters tall, and there was a series of winding mountain ranges on either side of it. Dabai could sense extremely dense energy from the summit of the mountain, so he flew toward it first. Along the way, Sun Yulua approached him again. Sword Immortal Enlin, how did your evil-slaying sword nurture a spirit? He asked with a curious expression. I'm not telling you. Enlin rolled his eyes. Then Sword Immortal Enlin, where did you obtain this sword? It's clearly not an ordinary sword, so it must be quite extraordinary, right? Sun Yulua asked. Enlin's expression darkened. Can't you control your mouth? Sun Yulua's voice faltered, and he looked at the evil-slaying sword, which was glowing with a frosty light. They flew toward the summit of the mountain. As they drew closer and closer, Enlin was already starting to feel a little disappointed. This mountain clearly wasn't a blood-erupting mountain, as it didn't even have a volcanic crater. That's right, there were only inky black rocks at the summit. There wasn't even a small hole, so where was the blood supposed to come from? The 3 of them landed at the summit of the mountain. There's nothing here, so why is the energy so dense? Enlin's brows furrowed. My senses are correct. There might be something inside the mountain, woof. Dabai unleashed his domain and slashed a deep trench into the rock formation with his claws. Following the appearance of the huge crack, what surprised everyone was that the entire mountain began to shake violently. Zhao Siming's expression shifted drastically as he approached the mountain. Be careful, everyone! A cavernous mouth suddenly opened up at the center of the mountain. Red liquid gushed forth from within the mouth. PFFF. The red liquid surged like a waterfall in the sky, creating an extremely spectacular sight to behold. The mountain was throwing up blood. Chapter 12:31. Blood-colored liquid gushed out and surged toward the disciples of the Sky Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect disciples immediately formed a defensive sword formation. One returned to Void Stage Mighty Figure, and 5 Soul Formation Stage Powerful Beings unleashed Boundless Sword Intent at the same time, creating a Blue Sword Intent barrier. The Blue Sword Intent barrier was knocked back several kilometers by the Crimson Liquid, and the 6 disciples suffered severe backlash in order to maintain the defensive formation. They felt as if their internal organs had been torn apart. What a terrifying power of blood and Zhao Siming's expression was grave, and he was considering retreat. It was quite clear that Dabai had attacked this mountain, but they had somehow become the scapegoats. The mountain was spraying blood at them. Dabai and Enlin were also dumbstruck. This is the legendary blood erupting mountain. Why is it different from what I had imagined? Woof! They had thought that the blood erupting mountain would erupt blood from the top, like a volcano. However, they didn't think that the blood erupting mountain would actually erupt blood from its King mouth. Ants, how dare you disturb my slumber? Go to hell. Gao Shan spoke. His voice was deep and thunderous, like the fury of heavenly thunder. It really is a mountain spirit. So the extremely rich, ghostly energy I sensed was coming from it. Woof! Dabai was astonished. Right at this moment, countless rocks on the mountain suddenly transformed into tentacles that reached toward Dabai. Dabai immediately fled into the distance with Enlin in his arms. Sword Immortal Enlin, watch me. Sun Yulaw drew his sword and slashed out a series of sword projections to shatter all of the rock tentacles. This was a mountain, and it wasn't scary at all. It was finally starting to look more majestic. Die! Countless holes suddenly appeared on the massive mountain. Even though they weren't as large as the mouth from before, the terrifying power of Een instantly swept through the surroundings, striking everyone with trepidation. Specks of red light appeared within the holes, and it was as if countless crimson eyes were staring at them in the darkness. I, the mountain spirit, have refined my body for 10,000 years, refined my blood for 10,000 years, and cultivated my soul for 10,000 years. I am not someone that ants like you can offend. Die. The cries of 10,000 ghosts came from the high mountains. Sun Yuluaw's legs gave out from under him. Boom, boom, boom. Countless amounts of blood-colored liquid suddenly shot out from the hole. From afar, it looked as if a huge mountain had suddenly spurted out countless flowers of blood from all parts of its body. Every single one of their blood splatters contained extremely terrifying Een energy that could corrode, melt, and freeze anything that came into contact with it. Sun Yulaw held his sword horizontally in front of him to ward off a splash of blood, but the power of Een and frost threatened to freeze his blood, and his long sword had been corroded to the point where it had become completely dull and lusterless. Let's retreat, Zhao, Simon shouted. He knew that this colossus was not something they could fight against. Puff, puff, puff. Fresh blood spurted out endlessly. The disciples of the heavenly sword sect fled frantically. Sun Yuluaw's face turned pale with fright at the sight of the countless streams of blood flying toward him, and he stumbled back in retreat. A white figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was none other than Enlin and his supreme steed, Dabai. After unleashing the origin energy of the netherworld, Enlin's aura climbed to the return to void stage, and a black light erupted from the evil-slaying sword as the true intent of the 6 strikes of the war god seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens. 3 techniques, 100 sword technique. 99 white, celestial swords pierced through the air, leaving a series of dazzling trajectories in their wake, and all of the crimson liquid that came into contact with the sword projections were instantly pulverized. The huge mountain ghost spirit hurriedly unleashed layers of ghostly energy to defend itself. However, the 6 strikes of the war god unleashed by Enlin in his origin energy of the netherworld form was already his full power. The mountain ghost spirit didn't have the power of the divine Tao, so it was dreaming if it wanted to defend itself against this attack. Whoosh! The white celestial swords tore through the ghostly energy defenses before puncturing the mountain's body. Wah! The mountain ghost spirit roared with agony. Every single part of its body had been punctured by the violent sword projections. 99 massive holes appeared, for which blood gushed forth, creating an extremely bloody scene. The mountain ghost spirit's slow movements made it a sitting duck. The 100th sword strike. The final sword strike. The evil-slaying sword's sword projection condensed to the extreme, and a paramount sword intent surged through heaven and earth. Just as Enlin thought that the evil-slaying sword was about to strike the mountain ghost spirit, a little girl in a black dress suddenly appeared before gripping tightly onto the hilt of the sword. Enlin's mouth gaped open. Little Xie stared expressionlessly at the mountain ghost spirit before slashing her sword downward. An inky black sword projection extended for several dozen kilometers, parting heaven and earth and engulfing all things. Heaven and earth were instantly plunged into pure darkness, and only the mountain ghost spirit's blood-curdling cries continued to reverberate through the air. When the darkness dissipated, everyone was astonished to discover that the gargantuan mountain, over 10,000 meters tall, had been sliced in half. Its vitality had been severed, and blood flowed like a raging river across the earth. The mountain ghost spirit died, just like that. Shueshan murmured. What a terrifying sword strike. Zhao Siming drew a sharp intake of breath. The fiend celestial ghost mountain had forced them into a corner, but it had been insta-killed by Enlin. The heavenly sword sect disciples had yet to come to their senses. Enlin flew toward little Xie with an excited expression on his face. Little Xie, you're way too powerful. I feel like my 100-sword sutra is even more powerful now that you're using it. Little Xie pursed her lips and raised her head proudly. She was just about to fly back into the evil slaying sword when Enlin caught her. Little Xie. Enlin pinched little Xie's chubby cheeks with a smile. You've done so well. Tell me, what do you want me to reward you with? Little Xie looked at Enlin expressionlessly. Can you get your filthy hands off me? Enlin ignored her and continued to pinch her cheeks. It was soft and smooth, warm and bouncy. It was so fun. Sun Yuluo was drooling. Just as little Xie was about to raise her sword to attack Enlin unleashed his divine weapon origin energy toward her. Little Xie moaned as a blush appeared on her face. She finally put down her sword and pried Enlin's hand away before glaring at Enlin before jumping back into the evil slaying sword. Enlin was still a little unsatisfied. A straightforward person would not resort to insinuations. He could play with his face for 10 years. Big brother, and something's coming out of the mountain, woof. Dabai suddenly yelled. A crimson bead suddenly leaped out of the mountain and fled into the distance. Enlin's eyes lit up. You want to run? He unleashed his wind sword and wings of wind at the same time, and his speed instantly broke through to 10 times the speed of sound. He grabbed toward the bead, and vital energy enshrouded the air to form a cage that imprisoned the bead. Divine Inspection Technique. Sky Sealing Dark King Bead. Collect the 9 dark beads scattered by the Dark King to obtain the true inheritance of the Sky Sealing Dark King from the Dark King Palace. A smile finally appeared on Enlin's face upon seeing this information. He had obtained the 6th Dark King bead. The mission of this trip was complete. Chapter 1232. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were filled with complex emotions at the sight of the elated Enlin. It seemed like they were going to be shocked and envious spectators again. I have to admit, Enlin really is a very powerful sword immortal. Shueshan's eyes rippled as she looked at the white figure in the distance. Enlin had displayed his prowess as a sword immortal time and time again, and he had struck a chord with the Heavenly Sword sect disciples over and over again. Zhao Siming heaved a faint sigh. Forget about that. Let's continue to search for the ancient sword. The sooner we find it, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. Everyone nodded. Let's go back, Dabai, Enlin said with an elated expression. Sword Immortal Enlin, are you really going to leave? Sun Yuluo was a little reluctant. He had to continue to search for the lost ancient sword of his sect. If Enlin decided to leave, then he would have no choice but to part ways with his idol. I've already accomplished my objective, so I have to go. Enlin waved a hand. Keep up the good work, Sun Yuluo. Sun Yuluo patted his chest with battle intent burning in his eyes. Don't worry, I won't let you down. Enlin nodded with a smile, but he was thinking to himself, only an idiot would have any hopes for you. With how scared you are of ghosts, you'll probably be scared to death by the ghost before you find the sword. Shueshan pulled out her disc. Now that the mountain ghost has been eliminated, the needle has changed again. The place with the most energy is in this direction. She extended a finger and pointed in a certain direction. However, before anyone had a chance to do anything, Enlin was just about to leave when the evil slaying sword on his back suddenly began to tremor. Ding! The evil slaying sword rose into the sky before flying toward a certain direction. Holy F***, CK. Enlin's expression shifted. He only came to his senses after a full second. His evil slaying sword ran away. Chase it down, Dabai. Don't worry, big brother, and I'll definitely help you catch up to little Xie. Woof. Sword Immortal Enlin, wait for me. 2 people and a dog began to fly in a certain direction. They were heading in the direction that Shueshan had indicated. Shueshan bit down on her lower lip with an aggrieved expression as tears welled up in her eyes. Why? Why did we become their followers again? The corner of Zhao Siming's mouth twitched. After struggling for a few seconds, he said, "Let's not waste any more time. Let's catch up with him." The six Sky Sword Sect disciples once again followed behind Enlin. Enlin chased after the evil-slaying sword for several dozen kilometers, but the evil-slaying sword plunged into the depths of the mountains like a pitiful little girl. Boom! The pitch-black blade was inserted in front of the gate of a temple with white walls and red tiles. "Little Xie, what are you doing here?" Enlin flew over from the distance with a perplexed expression. Dabai was panting heavily from exertion, and his tongue was hanging out of his mouth. "Little Xie, are you trying to tire me out like a dog?" "Woof." Little Xie didn't say anything, and she seemed to be preparing something. Enlin turned toward the temple with a curious expression. It was already in an extremely dilapidated state. Even though it was constructed from a special type of wood, it was already showing signs of decay. Could it be that there's something strange about this temple? Enlin murmured as he made his way into the temple. "Don't worry, Sword Immortal Enlin. All evil and filthy things are but fleeting clouds." Sun Yulaw swallowed nervously as he pulled out his broken sword from Enlin's body. He wasn't saying that to comfort Enlin. Instead, he was saying that to comfort himself. The two of them slowly made their way into the temple, and a putrid aura wafted toward them. Sun Yulaw's body shuddered as he surveyed his surroundings with a nervous expression. All of a sudden, the oil lamps and candles on both sides lit up at the same time, all of which were eerie green in color. "Ah!" Sun Yulaw screamed as he jumped up into the air. Enlin pressed a hand down on Sun Yulaw's face before grumbling, "Don't make a F***king fuss over nothing. It's exactly because of people like you that I've been to these places that I've become more and more fearful of." I'm sorry." Sun Yulaw had only just apologized when he suddenly screamed again. This time, the scream was so sudden that Enlin's body shuddered, and he flared up with rage. "What the F***ck is wrong with you now?" Sun Yulaw pointed up ahead as he spoke in a trembling voice. "Look at the god worshipped in this temple. Does it look familiar to you?" Enlin turned toward the god up ahead to discover that it was a little boy with delicate features. As expected, it was very familiar. Wasn't this the statue of the little boy who had tried to scare them on the city wall? Just as Enlin was feeling a little surprised, a sinister smile suddenly appeared on the little boy's face as his mouth opened wider and wider. A tongue shot forth and instantly elongated before winding itself around Sun Yulaw's neck like a spirit snake. Help me!" Sun Yulaw screamed hysterically. History was so eerily similar. The only difference was that Sun Yulaw was completely unprepared this time, and he seemed to have been given a huge fright. His entire face was red and pale as saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth, and he almost fainted. A crisp, eerie chuckle sounded. The little boy was very amused, and he began to chuckle with glee. "This doesn't look like that little boy. This is that little boy." Enlin was astonished. No wonder the evil-slaying sword had flown here so excitedly. It had sensed the little boy's presence. Sure enough, the statue slowly transformed back into the little boy in a dark yellow linen robe. A nimble and smooth tongue was still wrapped tightly around Sun Yulaw's neck. Sun Yulaw was on the verge of suffocation, and he struggled relentlessly, but his neck was bound too tightly, so he couldn't even cry out for help. This was a good thing for Enlin. "Let go of my underling at once." Enlin roared with rage as he drew his ancient sea immortal sword. The evil-slaying sword was still outside, so he could only make do with this intermediate rank immortal tool. Golden void lightning revolved around the ancient sea immortal sword, illuminating the entire temple with a golden light. "Demacia!" Enlin raised his sword and slashed it toward the little boy's tongue with the power to destroy all evil and filthy things. Splat! The little boy's tongue was sliced in half again. The boy howled in pain. Knowing that he was no match for Enlin, he immediately fled toward the exit of the temple. His figure was as fast as a ghost and as fast as lightning. That's right, he had unleashed his most proficient movement technique again. At this speed, even Enlin was unable to catch up. However, right at this moment, A resounding boom erupted between heaven and earth. A sword projection erupted from the evil slaying sword. An inky black sword intent formed a massive sword net formation that enshrouded the entire temple and cut off all avenues of escape for the little boy. Little Xie flew through the air in a black robe with a pure smile on her round face. "You won't be able to get away now," she spoke in a domineering voice. "You must be mine." And Lin drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. My God, my little Xie is going to accept a harem? Chapter 1233. Little Xie's emotions were completely disrupted upon hearing Lin's words. She almost wanted to put the matter of the little boy aside and go beat Lin up. The little boy's body crashed into the sword intent formation before being repelled. He immediately pounced toward little Xie with rage as his hands turned a dark blue color, and his attacks were imbued with extremely terrifying sharpness. Little Xie's expression did not change in the slightest. She turned her petite body to the side and evaded the little boy's attacks at an extremely precise angle. At the same time, her hands shot forth like lightning as she locked onto the little boy's wrist before kicking his stomach viciously with her delicate foot. Boom! The terrifying collision created shockwaves that swept forth for over a kilometer. The little boy's eyes widened from the kick, and he threw up a mouthful of blue blood before crashing into the temple, where he left a massive crater in the ground. "Is that all you've got? If that's all you've got, then I wouldn't even bother to take you in." Little Xie looked down at the little boy from above. Even though her features were quite young and tender, her superior and domineering queen aura was on full display. A ferocious expression appeared on the little boy's face, and the flesh on his hands fell off to reveal his bony white bones. Sun Yulong almost vomited upon seeing this. The little boy roared as he pounced toward little Xie, and his bony hands were imbued with extreme sharpness as they slashed toward little Xie. Even space itself was sliced apart in their wake. Little Xie harumphed coldly upon seeing this before swatting at the little boy's bony hands with her tender, white hands. She's going to block that attack with her body? Sun Yulong's eyes widened, and Lin pursed his lips. Little Xie is a pinnacle immortal tool, so what's wrong with using her body? Sure enough, the bony claws clashed with the tender, white hands, upon which a loud screeching sound erupted. Sparks flew, and the little boy's hard and sharp bones were cracked open by little Xie's palms. Little Xie turned around and lashed out another kick at the little boy before her. Boom! Amidst the collision, the little boy was kicked into the formation and spat out another mouthful of blue blood. Before he even had a chance to catch his breath, little Xie had already appeared before him, and she mercilessly slapped him into the ground right before his eyes of shock and horror. Boom! The ground shook again. The little boy was lying on the ground, and before he had a chance to get up, little Xie rushed over to him and rained down countless punches upon him, each of which was lethal. Boom, 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 and Lin, Dabai, and Sun Yulong stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes with flabbergasted expressions. The arrogant little boy was completely powerless against little Xie's attacks, and he was beginning to doubt his own life. Didn't little Xie say she was going to take him in? Why does it look like she's trying to kill him? And Lin stared at little Xie with astonishment on his face. Too tragic. How could such an adorable girl be so violent? Sun Yulong murmured to himself in astonishment. From the looks of it now, it was not unjust that he had suffered that sword strike when he courted death. At least, the little boy's experience was much worse than his. Zhao Siming and the other 5 who had arrived late were also shocked by this scene as they stood outside the sword slash. And Lin's sword spirit is so terrifying. We definitely cannot provoke this woman. I can't be fooled by appearances, everyone began to grumble. At this moment, the little boy's body had already been completely deformed by little Xie's punches, and his body was gradually becoming more and more insubstantial. Spare me. Spare me. I was wrong. I won't do it again. The little boy wailed and begged for mercy. That's enough, little Xie. If you keep this up, this ghost really is going to die. And Lin also tried to dissuade her. Ghost. Little Xie cocked her head to the side. Who told you he was a ghost? and Lin didn't understand what little Xie was implying. At this moment, little Xie launched another merciless punch into the little boy's face. Bam! An explosion erupted. The little boy exploded. Everyone was dumbstruck, thinking that the little boy was going to be crushed to death. However, a dark blue longsword suddenly appeared before little Xie. The terrifying sword chi energy continued to spread. The frosty sword intent seemed to be able to freeze space itself. This time, almost everyone's eyes widened as a thought occurred to them. Why was little Xie interested in him? Why was little Xie able to detect him and say that he wasn't a ghost? This boy who liked to play tricks on people. He was actually a sword spirit. It's the Blue Dream ancient sword. It's the ancient sword that gave birth to a spirit that escaped from our sect. Zhao Siming exclaimed. No wonder the little boy ran away so quickly. He's the ancient sword that was lost by our sect. How could an ancient sword that escaped from the Heavenly Sword sect be weak? Shueshan also came to a sudden realization. Almost at the exact same moment, all of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples' eyes lit up with scorching light. Right at this moment, little Xie grabbed onto the ancient sword and said in a cold voice, "You're mine now." Gasp! All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were given a fright upon seeing this. And Lin was also given a huge fright. At the same time, he praised little Xie in his heart. Little Xie was planning to beat this sword spirit into submission before taking it into her harem. Sure enough, little Xie began to draw a divine symbol in midair. This is a slave contract. You'll be my underling from now on. An intrigued expression appeared on Lin's face. He didn't think that sword spirits could enter into slave contracts. Absolutely not. This is the ancient sword of our Heavenly Sword sect. You don't have a right to do this. Zhao Siming yelled in an urgent voice. This belongs to our sect. If you accept it, you'll be provoking our sect. Please reconsider, Mr. Lin. Shueshan also tried to dissuade him. Stop. If you do this, you'll have to face the wrath of our Heavenly Sword sect. Another disciple yelled. And Lin instantly burst into laughter upon hearing this. Is the wrath of your Heavenly Sword sect very scary? Lu Mingxian was kicked out of the 4-9 Immortal sect by me. So how much is your wrath worth? And Lin turned toward the Heavenly Sword sect disciples outside the sword formation with a smile on his face. Besides, the Blue Dream ancient sword has given birth to a spirit and escaped from the Heavenly Sword sect, which means that the ancient sword has regained its freedom and is no longer the property of your sect. Little Xie subdued him with her own power, so he should be little Xie's underling. That is indeed the case. Living beings with independent thoughts are essentially independent beings, just like how beast pets should not be forced to return to their own sect. This is the consensus of all the sects in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Sun Yuluo nodded in agreement. Zhao Siming flared up with rage. Sun Yuluo, are you a member of the Heavenly Sword sect or the 4-9 Immortal sect? Sun Yuluo recoiled slightly upon hearing this. Don't waste your breath on them. Let's just do what we're supposed to do. If they want to make a fuss, they'll have to break my sword formation first, little Xie said in a domineering manner. Zhao Siming and the others trembled with rage upon hearing this. Little Xie's spell formation was extremely advanced, and they really wouldn't be able to break it. No one can take what belongs to the Heavenly Sword sect. An ethereal voice suddenly sounded in the distance. I can break a mere sword formation with a single hand. As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling golden sword ray landed on the sword formation formed by the pitch-black sword rays. The sword projection tore a massive gash into little Xie's spell formation, as if it had pierced through the darkness. Chapter 1234. Little Xie's spell formation had been broken in an extremely violent manner. Her opponent had to have attained the power of the Divine Tao, which was at least at the Return to Void final stage. Everyone turned their gazes in the direction of the sword slash, only to see a blue-robed sword immortal walking over through the void. He held a faint golden immortal sword in one hand and an Een disc in the other. His facial features were chiseled and cold, and his eyes glowed with a frosty light. And Lin immediately felt like this man had the demeanor of a sword immortal, and he immediately sensed that he was quite powerful. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were extremely excited upon seeing this man. It's Brother Ouyang Xia. This is great. Brother Ouyang Xia is a top-rate sword immortal at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. He'll definitely be able to take care of this. We can take back our Blue Dream ancient sword now. All of the disciples discussed spiritedly among themselves as Ouyang Xia made his way toward Little Xie. Let go of the Blue Dream ancient sword. It belongs to our Heavenly Sword sect. And Lin interjected, Oi, the ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit is already a complete life form. According to the rules of the sects on the Tai Chu continent, if it escapes, the Heavenly Sword sect won't be able to decide who it belongs to. First come, first served. Ouyang Xia glared at Lin with a cold expression. It belongs to the Heavenly Sword sect, and it will always belong to the Heavenly Sword sect. No one can take it away from it. And Lin's expression darkened. Are you going to throw away your dignity just to take back the ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit? The ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit is extremely rare. So what if I take it back by force? Ouyang Xia spoke with a haughty expression. At this moment, Little Xie had already inscribed a divine symbol in the air, for which a black light burst forth, creating ripples of sword intent in the air. Ouyang Xia's expression shifted upon seeing this. Stop. And Lin instantly appeared before Little Xie with a smile. You want to take the sword? You'll have to get past me first. Don't think that just because you defeated trash like Ao Ming, almighty figures at the return to Void Pinnacle stage are inferior to him. I'm going to make you understand just how puny you are compared to me. An extremely dazzling divine Dao light burst forth from Ouyang Xia's golden immortal sword, and the space around it began to twist and crack as sword intent surged forth. Hurry up and accept my contract, Little Xie said in an indifferent voice. The Blue Dream sword trembled in fear. After sensing Ouyang Xia's presence, its hesitation lessened and it pounced toward the black divine seal. Piss off! Ouyang Xia roared with rage as he slashed his sword toward Little Xie. A golden sword light shot through the heavens and the earth like a golden crescent moon, and it contained boundless and domineering energy of the divine Tao that was capable of obliterating and shattering all things. This was a sword strike that was even more terrifying than breaking through Little Xie's defensive formation. This was Ouyang Xia's full-powered attack. With Little Xie's current power level, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to take this attack head-on. And Lin stood in front of Little Xie with an indifferent expression as he pulled out his vermilion bird mirror. He even had the leisure to turn around and urge Little Xie, hurry up and make a contract. Ouyang Xia was enraged upon seeing this, and he felt like he had been insulted. The price of arrogance was death. However, right before everyone's astonished eyes, Ouyang Xia's extremely domineering sword strike was miraculously deflected in the instant it came into contact with Lin. Ouyang Xia's heart jolted, and he immediately positioned his sword before him to defend himself. However, his enraged attack was not going to be blocked so easily. The golden sword projection tore through the air with unstoppable force. This Heavenly Sword sect disciple was instantly knocked flying for several kilometers by his own sword strike, and his blood churned within his body as his sword intent wreaked havoc, and blood trickled down from the corners of his lips. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were dumbstruck. Their peerlessly powerful Heavenly Sword sect disciple had been severely wounded by Lin's attack. What kind of strange artifact is this? Ouyang Xia looked at Lin with a hint of wariness in his eyes. He saw Lin pull out a mirror. It was also at this moment that a crisp, ringing sound erupted. The Blue Dream sword had officially become Little Xie's underling. No! Ouyang Xia stared at her with shock and rage as boundless golden light erupted from his immortal sword as he charged toward her again. Meanwhile, Lin unleashed his fire god mode and charged toward Ouyang Xia with divine flames and holy flames revolving around his body. 4 times, Fire God Fist. A fiery light, as dazzling as the sun, erupted from his fist, and the space in its wake twisted and cracked as all things melted into nothingness. Ouyang Xia could sense an extremely dangerous aura from Enlin's fist. He slashed his sword toward Enlin, and the power of the divine Tao surged as a dazzling golden light erupted from his sword. However, Enlin's fist actually managed to deform Ouyang Xia's sword projection with an extremely terrifying force. A massive force surged forth and instantly enveloped Ouyang Xia's entire body. PFFF. Ouyang Xia threw up another mouthful of blood as his body flew back. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were dumbstruck. Their senior brother had been blasted flying by Enlin again. Isn't Sword Immortal Enlin supposed to be skilled in the sword? Why is he so bad *SS even with his fists? Sun Yuluan murmured. Enlin's aura surged as he made his way toward Ouyang Xia like a fire god. Didn't you say that I'm insignificant compared to you? Why do you keep throwing up blood? Is your body in a bad condition? Ouyang Xia's breathing accelerated as he gritted his teeth and roared at Enlin, "Come at me again." Golden sword projections lit up the world as divine flames incinerated space, and the two clashed in the air again. Boom, boom, boom. Shockwaves surged for close to 10 kilometers as light illuminated the dark heaven and earth within the dead spirit demonic land. A smile appeared on little Xie's face as she looked up at Enlin. He's quite reliable. She then turned toward the blue dream sword. The blue dream sword shuddered slightly before flying around little Xie in a fawning manner. A smile appeared on little Xie's face. Even though you and I have established a sword spirit master-slave contract, you were still refined by a human and made him your master. What do you think of mine, Lin? The blue dream sword tilted its blade slightly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Oh? You're saying Enlin doesn't understand your heart? Do you have someone else in your heart? Little Xie asked with a meaningful smile. The blue dream sword nodded in agreement. Who is he? Little Xie asked. Sun Yulua was just enjoying his idol's battle when he suddenly felt a chill run down his back. What's that? He turned around to discover a little boy lying on his back with a 100-degree smile on his face. His eyes were bulging as he licked Sun Yulua's cheek. Sun Yulua let loose a scream of several hundred decibels, and he felt like his consciousness was about to leave his body. Save me. His legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed to the ground as he pleaded for little Xie's help. Little Xie turned to Sun Yulua with a peculiar expression. You're talking about him? The little boy nodded before sticking out his tongue and licking Sun Yulua's neck. Sun Yulua's entire body trembled. That familiar yet terrifying sensation made his entire body go limp. Little Xie, what a weird hobby. Chapter 1235. Third Elder Zhu Yunshan's sweeping cloud sword technique is the #1 sword trapping formation in our sect. If you don't want to piss off, then hurry up and make a decision, little Xie said in a cold voice. I'll accept you as my master. Before you make a decision, think about yourself first. Obtaining a treasure that is far beyond your own power is a disaster, not a stroke of luck. An inky black sword projection engulfed heaven and earth as Zhu Yunshan's blood-curdling cries erupted. Zhu Yunshan's expression shifted, and he also slashed his sword toward little Xie. Zhao Siming and the others instantly fell silent. The little boy's voice suddenly sounded from behind Sun Yulua. Sun Yulua looked at the oncoming sword projection with no fear on his face, and he didn't even take a single step back. The blue dream sword wanted to accept him as its master? What a joke. When the light reappeared, Zhu Yunshan had already hurtled back in retreat, and there was a massive gash on his chest from which blood was gushing forth. Enlin and little Xie both burst into laughter. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples stared at Sun Yulua with astonishment on their faces, and the third elder was enraged. However, he was now seriously considering whether he should accept the blue dream sword as its master or not. Sun Yulua didn't know, but he didn't regret his decision. Zhao Siming also heaved a forlorn sigh. Sun Yulua, do you still not understand? You've already been expelled from the sect by the third elder. If you accept the blue dream sword as its master, You'll be making an enemy of the Heavenly Sword sect, and there will be no place for you in this world anymore. Almost everyone felt a bone-chilling power descend upon them. An ethereal voice sounded. It wasn't very loud, but it was imbued with a deafening power. Why is it me? After a long pause, he finally spoke. I'm not leaving, but if the blue dream ancient sword chooses me. Sun Yulor raised his head with a scorching expression. As a sword immortal, if I don't even try to seize an opportunity like this, how am I supposed to cultivate in the future? The sword projection continued to fall. Boom! An extremely proud and resolute sword, intense sword into the sky. Sun Yulor, stop your idiotic actions. You don't deserve this ancient sword. Sun Yulor, you actually dared to let the blue dream sword recognize you as its master. I'm going to kill you. You asked for it. Zhu Yinshan roared. Mistress Little Xia, please save me. Sun Yulor's hair stood on end as the little boy lay on him, and he was on the verge of tears. Sun Yulor took a deep breath. I know what I'm capable of, and I know that I'm not powerful enough to nurture an ancient sword spirit. Your strength isn't much, but you talk so much nonsense. What's going on? Sun Yulor asked in a tense voice. The forces of the Heavenly Sword sect were so terrifying. Could he really escape successfully? Sun Yulor, I'll give you 10 seconds to hand over the blue dream sword. Otherwise, I'll still take the ancient sword and expel you from the Heavenly Sword sect. Zhu Yinshan warned in a stern voice. The cloud turned into a giant sword that was thousands of feet long and fell from the sky. A carefree sword intent soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds in the sky. As the third elder of the Sky Sword sect, he had no choice but to do this in order to bring back the ancient sword. Sun Yulor had finally become the master of the blue dream sword. Little Xia clasped her hands behind her back and slowly made her way over to Sun Yulor. Right at this moment, the little girl in black appeared in front of him with her evil slaying sword, and she slashed her sword through the air to pulverize Zhu Yunshan's sword projection. Little Xia told him the reason why the little boy had told her, and a smile appeared on her face. I respect the opinions of all sword spirits, so I'll agree to this wedding as long as you agree. Little son, if you don't have anywhere else to go, you can come to the 4-9 Immortal sect. The 4-9 Immortal sect isn't afraid of the Heavenly Sword sect anyway. If you come to our sect, we'll beat up anyone from the Heavenly Sword sect who dares to attack you. Just as Sun Yulor was hesitating, Ouyang Xia's enraged roar erupted from the sky above. No, I only want you. 5 kilometers of frost, 50 kilometers of falling snow. A dejected expression appeared on the little boy's face upon hearing this. The refinement process was very quick. The cultivator riding atop the white horse drew his sword, and cloud and mist surged for over 50 kilometers. Little Xia slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Zhu Yunshan's chest. Sun Yulor's words reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Little Xia spoke in an indifferent voice before turning toward Zhao, Siming, and the others. The sword spirit had voluntarily chosen him as its master. This was something that he had never even dared to dream about. What kind of luck and fortune did he have to encounter to receive such a blessing? I'm no longer a member of the Heavenly Sword sect. This world is so vast. Where should I go? The third elder is here. Sun Yulor's mouth gaped open, and he fell into a daze. Just as Sun Yulor was rooted to the spot, a white mist sword projection fell from the sky. Sun Yulor, 10 seconds have passed. Sun Yulor, you're no longer a member of the Heavenly Sword sect. Piss off. After stowing away the blue dream ancient sword, what awaited him next was a relentless pursuit and escape. Zhu Yinshan was just about to charge towards Sun Yulor when a black figure appeared before him. After giving birth to a spirit, the ancient sword would only accept a new master after the death of the previous master. The two sword projections clashed, and Sun Yulor's sword projection was pulverized by the white mist sword projection. However, Enlin and Little Xia were like two massive mountains standing in their way, rendering them completely powerless to do anything. To their surprise, even though Little Xia was quite short and petite, her movements were extremely agile, and she instantly evaded Zhu Yunshan's sword projection before bringing her evil slaying sword down. At the same time, Sun Yulua felt an extremely terrifying might enshrouding his entire body, as if he would be killed by that power if he did anything out of line. Little Xie's eyes narrowed into crescents as she smiled. Save you? Why would you do that? Do you know what kind of situation you're in right now? Sun Yulua, if you dare to accept the Blue Dream ancient sword as its master, the Heavenly Sword sect won't tolerate you anymore. He says he thinks you're very fun, so he's going to accept you as his master. It'll be very interesting in the future. The little boy grinned at him before sticking out his tongue and slurping it in Sun Yulua's face. Sun Yulua suddenly felt an empty space behind him, and the cool sensation suddenly disappeared. Sun Yulua immediately released his blood essence to refine the Blue Dream ancient sword. He turned around and was met by the little boy's sincere and innocent eyes. Before he had a chance to react, an ancient blue sword flew toward him while emitting a loud ringing sound. This is the Blue Dream ancient sword that the Heavenly Sword sect has nurtured a spirit that only appears once every 10,000 years. Now he wants to impudence. Little Xie swung her sword again, and an inky black sword projection instantly shattered the massive sword projection. Boom! At this moment, a cultivator riding atop a white horse with a single horn suddenly appeared in the distance. As he spoke, the endless white fog had already enveloped the surroundings of the temple from all directions, forming a trapping formation with nowhere to escape. Zhu Yinshan only wanted the ancient sword that had nurtured a spirit. He didn't care about Sun Yulua at all. Zhu Yinshan was a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage of the Heavenly Sword sect, and Lin and Ouyangxia were currently engaged in a fierce battle. If he took advantage of the situation, who would be able to stop him? Sun Yulua grabbed onto the cold, tender little hand on his shoulder with an earnest expression. If you choose me, then I won't let you down. I'll do everything in my power to prove to you that I have the right to have you. Sun Yulua turned to the little boy behind him with a dumbstruck expression. All of the Heavenly Sword sect cultivators were enraged upon seeing this. Sun Yulua's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. The white mist sword projection was extremely fast, but Sun Yulua raised the sword in his hand and let loose an almighty roar as he unleashed an extremely dazzling sword projection into the sky. Sun Yulua's face was filled with sorrow and sorrow. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples turned to the elders with scorching light in their eyes. Little Xie pointed at Sun Yulua as she spoke. Right at this moment, Lin's voice sounded in the sky above. Chapter 1236. Tears welled up in Sun Yulua's eyes as he listened to Lin's words. He had nowhere else to go, but his idol told him there was a place he could go. The 4-9 Immortal sect could shelter him from a storm. Sun Yulua, do you want to join the 4-9 Immortal sect? Lin asked. Sun Yulua gripped his long sword tightly with excitement. I do. I want to join the 4-9 Immortal sect. He could tolerate being ostracized by the sect because he admired someone, and he could also endure the humiliation and fight to the death for the safety of the sect disciples. However, at the same time, he could choose a sect that he liked even when he was looked down upon and banished from the sect. Very good. From this day forth, we're family. Lin smiled. Sun Yulua felt like he was in a dream. Before he knew it, he had obtained the Blue Dream ancient sword, joined the 4-9 Immortal sect, and become the family of his idol. Are you happy? The little boy's voice sounded from behind him. I'm very surprised, but I'm also very happy. A warm smile appeared on Sun Yulua's face as he turned to the little boy lying on the ground behind him. The little boy smiled back at him, and his 2 eyeballs popped out of his eye sockets before rubbing against Sun Yulua's face to find that they were smooth and cold. Ah. Sun Yulua screamed with extreme horror on his face, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head as his legs gave out from under him, and he fell to the ground. He had almost lost his soul from fear. Hee. So fun. The little boy chuckled with elation. After catching his breath, Sun Yulua had tears flowing down his face. What kind of B** star had he accepted as his sword spirit? The battle in the sky was also drawing to a conclusion. Third Elder Zhu Yinshan had been ravaged by little Xie, and his body was riddled with wounds. The first disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect, Ouyang Xia, had also been forced into retreat by Enlin and was clearly on the losing end. Damn it, let's get out of here. Zhu Yinshan finally couldn't hold on any longer. Ouyang Xia's expression darkened, and he slashed aside the oncoming man with his sword before retreating in retreat. Enlin, remember this. The Blue Dream ancient sword belongs to our Heavenly Sword sect. So, Sun Yuluo must die. This debt, my Heavenly Sword sect will get it back sooner or later. Enlin shrugged. If you're done with your pleasantries, scram. Ouyang Xia's chest constricted with rage, and he glowered at Sun Yuluo before fleeing the scene. Zhao Siming and the others also took a meaningful glance at Enlin and Sun Yuluo before flying into the distance. Thus, Sun Yuluo became the sworn enemy of their sect. This made them feel extremely complicated. The image of Sun Yuluo risking his life to battle the crimson humanoid figure in order to save them at the Flower Slaughter formation lingered in his mind. They were still thinking that perhaps after returning to the sect, their relationship with each other could be further improved. Who would have thought that in such a short time, they would become enemies of different sects? What a cruel twist of fate. And Lin flew back to the ground and stretched his body. Phew, that was a very satisfying battle. Ouyang Xia is a very good training partner. An expression of reverence appeared on Sun Yuluo's face. Sword Immortal Enlin, Ouyang Xia is one of the most powerful sword immortals in our sect, and he is also the disciple that sect leader Lu Mingxian is most proud of. I didn't think that he would only be worthy of being your training partner. Enlin replied with an indifferent expression, "It is his honor to be able to train with me." Sun Yuluo was struck by a sense of deep veneration upon hearing this. As expected of the person he admired, he was indeed domineering. "I'm sorry, Sword Immortal Enlin. I've caused you so much trouble." An apologetic expression appeared on Sun Yuluo's face. "I obtained the Blue Dream ancient sword and benefited immensely, but in the end, I still have to rely on you to deal with the Heavenly Sword sect." Why are you so good to me?" And Lin patted Sun Yuluo's shoulder. "Don't think too much about it. I don't care what happens to the Heavenly Sword sect. I'm treating you so well because I like you." "Like me?" Sun Yuluo was a little perplexed. He had exceptional aptitude and was once the disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect leader, but the 4-9 Immortal sect had no shortage of supremely talented prodigies, and Lin nodded in affirmation. No matter how much the sect rejects him or how much the disciples look down on him, he's still willing to shed blood for his fellow sect members in times of need. Who wouldn't like him? So that's the reason. Sun Yuluo stared blankly at Enlin as countless thoughts surged through his mind. Enlin smiled. "Aside from that, you have many other good qualities. Don't look down on yourself. I have high hopes for you. Good luck." Tears welled up in Sun Yuluo's eyes, and he nodded heavily. "Yes, sect leader Enlin. I won't let you down." Thus, the three of them rose into the air and embarked on their return journey. The two sword spirits seemed to be quite fond of the dead spirit demonic lands environment, and they would come out for a stroll from time to time. Little Xia was in a very good mood after obtaining a new underling, and she began to hum a delightful tune as she sat on Debai's head. Her voice was immature, but it was very clear, and the melody was also very moving. Enlin listened with relish. A little boy was lying on Sun Yuluo's back, and he was also humming a song. "Red blood stains the wall red, a little human head rolled under the bed." This was a peculiar melody and terrifying lyrics. Sun Yuluo screamed with his hands over his ears as tears flowed from his eyes. Why was there such a huge disparity between the two of them? He was about to have a mental breakdown. Little Xia sang so well, and Lin praised with elation, and he couldn't help but pinch little Xia's soft little cheeks, drawing a disdainful look from little Xia. However, the disdainful look on her face was also extremely adorable. The little boy also finished his song, and he lay on Sun Yuluo's back before planting a deep kiss on him. "Did I sing well? Can you stop singing?" Sun Yulua was so scared that he couldn't even speak properly. Sure. The little boy smiled before extending his long tongue around Sun Yulua's neck. Sun Yulua's eyes rolled over into the back of his head, and he fainted. A second before he fainted, he was still sighing with emotion. As far as sword spirits were concerned, everyone had their own unique circumstances. Enlin and he were in heaven, while Enlin was in hell. After scaring Sun Yulua unconscious, the little boy was a little bored, and he reverted back to his ancient blue sword form before lying silently on Sun Yulua's back. At the same time, he also released his Een energy to nurture Sun Yulua's meridians. This was a good thing. However, the Een energy seemed to have some side effects. Sun Yulua was having nightmares, and even though he was unconscious, tears were flowing from the corners of his eyes. From time to time, he would scream and yell, "No, no, poor little son, woof." Dabai was feeling a little distressed. How'd they end up together? Enlin was also quite mystified by this. Little Xie glanced at Enlin before speaking in an indifferent voice. This is fate. Chapter 1237. Enlin rode on Dabai's back and quickly returned to the sect. He immediately gathered all of the core members of the sect for a meeting upon his return. Ahem, allow me to introduce Sun Yulua, a new member of our 4-9 Immortal sect. We plan to have him join the Sword Pavilion, so please give him a round of applause. Hua hua hua, pa pa pa. And Lin's voice had only just fallen when raucous applause erupted from within the sect. A bright light flashed through Lu Qianhuan's purple eyes. Brother Sun Yulua, my God, you're here. Sun Yulua was also very elated. Sister Lu Qianhuan, we're going to be in the same sect from now on. This really is fate. Lu Qianhuan spoke with a serious expression. Please refer to me as Pavilion Leader. Sun Yulua, Pavilion. Pavilion Leader. Bai Ling was speechless. Enlin always brings people back with him every time he goes out. What a habit. Tang Shimin hunched his shoulders with a fearful expression. That's not important. I'm more concerned about what that thing behind Sun Yulua is. Behind Sun Yulua, a dark blue frosty aura seemed to be able to engulf the surrounding light. A little boy had his hands on his shoulders, and his chin was resting on his shoulders as he cracked a sinister smile at everyone. This scene caused everyone to involuntarily suck in a mouthful of cold air. Yiling was so scared that she hid under a chair as she trembled uncontrollably. Oh, I forgot to introduce him. That little boy is the sword spirit of the blue dream sword that Sun Yulua refined, and Lin introduced. Everyone was astonished. What kind of sword spirit was that? We're not well educated. Please don't lie to us. Just as everyone was in shock, the little boy suddenly stuck out his long pink tongue before flicking it toward the side of Sun Yulua's face. Slash. Oh, holy **T. Save me. Sun Yulua screamed as he almost suffocated. Everyone, a master like this had tamed a sword spirit like this? How terrifying. Immediately afterward, Enlin explained why he wanted to recruit Sun Yulua, as well as his conflict with the Heavenly Sword sect. Lu Qianhuan stroked her chin as she analyzed the situation. My father places great importance on the cultivation of talented sword immortals, and he places even greater importance on the sword spirits that have been nurtured. He views them as a symbol of the sect, as well as a spiritual guide. In his heart, an ancient sword that had successfully nurtured a spirit was even more important than a return to void, final stage mighty figure who had attained the power of the divine Tao. So according to my understanding of him, I'm afraid he won't let this matter rest. Lu Qianhuan analyzed the situation. Everyone's expression turned solemn. Sun Yulua was both concerned and guilty, and he clenched his fists in self-reproach. Enlin's expression was extremely relaxed. Don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of. In the sect, we have the 99 levels Extreme Sect Protective Array. It won't be long before our sect obtains the Starfire Battleship, and we'll be able to battle even Tao Integration Stage super mighty figures. What is there to be afraid of? A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face upon hearing this. The Starfire Battleship should be fully repaired in less than half a year. When everyone heard these words, their expressions finally relaxed a lot. The conference concluded. and Lin sat down under the willow tree and organized the items in his storage ring. He was still missing 3 dark beads. Using Huang Fuan as a reference, there were 2 return to void initial stage beads, and they were all located in the same place, the Abyss of Evil. What a familiar place. A reminiscent expression appeared on Lin's face. Thinking back, he had slain sinister devils there once, in the southeastern region of the Kingdom of the 9 States. At the border of the Heavenly River State, an inky black, gargantuan fissure extended for an infinitely long distance appeared on the ground, separating the human territory from the ant tribe territory like a natural chasm. And Lin descended from the sky on dog kinesis flight and descended into the gigantic abyss that engulfed all light. One of the dark beads is located in the Dark Soul Lake in the Abyss of Evil, while the other is located in the body of an extremely powerful sinister devil. Both of them are located at the very depths of the Abyss of Evil. And Lin took a glance at the map and had a rough idea of how difficult it was to find them. When he first entered the Abyss of Evil, he had only made it to the central region. That region was filled with spirit-nurturing stage mighty figures and soul formation stage mighty figures. The sinister devil's power system was different from that of the outside world. However, sinister devils that were comparable to soul formation stage mighty figures could already speak and possess intelligence. This was the case with the sinister devil boss that Lin had encountered last time. As for more powerful sinister devils, he had yet to see one. It's getting darker and darker. Dabai wagged his snowy white tail as he descended from the sky. I should have brought Big Brother Cho along. His eyes could act as super searchlights, and it should be a lot more comfortable. Woof. Xiao Cho is currently enjoying his newlywed life, so I won't disturb him for now. And Lin was quite open-minded, and there was a hint of envy in his voice. Little Xie seemed to prefer dark environments as well, and she soon jumped out from the evil-slaying sword on Lin's back before sitting on Dabai's back. She grabbed onto Lin's sleeve with her slender hands as she surveyed their surroundings with an intrigued expression. The mutant beasts that resided in the Abyss of Evil pounced toward Dabai from time to time. However, they didn't even get within 1,000 feet of Dabai before they were instantly shredded to death by the silvery white winds. Haha, I've returned as a powerful being. I'll slay anyone who dares to stand in my way. Dabai was very excited. It could be said that he was virtually invincible here. Dabai was as nervous and fearful as he had been in the Abyss of Evil as he had been in a sorry state during his escape. Now that he was here, he felt as invincible as ever. Soon, they had descended for tens of thousands of meters before discovering a flat area at the very bottom of the abyss. After we find a flat area, we'll find a massive crack in the ground. If we continue down there, we'll be able to reach the central region of the Abyss of Evil, and Lin instructed. As they spoke, Dabai suddenly blasted an air cannon into the distance, which reduced a centipede monster up ahead to mincemeat. To them, the front part of the Abyss of Evil was like a park. No living being could survive a single attack from Dabai. For hours later, they finally discovered a massive crack. We can reach the central region of the Abyss of Evil from here. Let's go. A hint of anticipation appeared on Lin's face. He descended onto Bai's back and descended through the inky black crack. Thus, the sunlight in the sky was completely obscured, and the surrounding space was plunged into pure darkness. At the same time, in the deepest part of the Abyss of Evil, a dreamy, inky black figure opened its eyes, which were as bright as the stars in the night sky. Another powerful living being has visited my abyss. Even though its cultivation base is very low, the energy within its body is extraordinarily powerful. Interesting, huh? The blood within my body is also throbbing. Could it be the bearer of the Tian Ming Dao? The figure suddenly became excited. Chapter 1238. And Lin continued downward onto Bai's back. Their surroundings were extremely dark, so they could only use their divine sense to scout ahead. Phew, what a comfortable feeling. Little Xie narrowed her eyes with a hint of enjoyment in her eyes. So little Xie likes dark places? And Lin was also very excited as he recalled her performance in the Dead Spirit Demonic Land. If there was one thing that the Dead Spirit Demonic Land and the Abyss of Evil had in common, it would most likely be darkness. Little Xie thought to herself for a moment before replying, I'm sure I don't like dark places, but I'm not sure what I like either. Perhaps I like the sinister and treacherous atmosphere, as well as the indiscernible energy drifting through space. Just as they were speaking, a dark shadow suddenly leaped out of the darkness before pouncing toward Lin at an extremely fast speed. Its sharp claws tore through the air in a lethal trajectory. It was a sinister devil. Before Dabai even had a chance to attack, little Xie gripped her evil-slaying sword and stabbed it toward the sinister devil at an even faster speed, instantly puncturing its chest. Gasp! The sinister devil let loose a blood-curdling cry as its body quickly crumbled. A peculiar energy suddenly appeared before latching onto the evil-slaying sword and being slowly absorbed by it. A flush appeared on little Xie's face, and her eyes glowed with excitement. I want more, she spoke with excitement. And Lin was surprised. Little Xie, you can increase your power by killing sinister devils? Little Xie stroked the blade of her sword with a faint smile. This is a new discovery after nurturing a spirit. I think I know how to upgrade it to a divine tool now. After that, little Xie transformed into a god of slaughter in the abyss of evil. Boom, boom, boom. Sword intent tore through the entire space. An adorable little girl wielding a black sword unleashed a devastating slaughter. All mutant beasts and sinister devils howled with anguish. And Lin rode onto Bai's back in a carefree manner, and all of the hostile living beings he encountered were slain by little Xie with a single sword strike. All living beings in her wake fell to their knees. This trip to the abyss of evil has suddenly become so easy, woof, Dabai said. And Lin chewed on a spirit fruit as he roamed through the darkness with a smile on his face. Little Xie is so awesome. She's like a tyrant in this place. Little Xie stood on the head of a demonic dragon and severed its head before turning to Lin with a cold expression. Female Overlord? This title is too unpleasant. Please call me your majesty. Lin, didn't it feel weird to call a cute little girl queen? Suddenly, he remembered the little girl who put the crown on his head. It doesn't seem so out of place. Instead, it's quite natural. In the central region of the abyss of evil, evil demons were appearing more frequently, and there were also all kinds of ferocious and cruel exotic beasts roaming about. And Lin didn't make a single move along the way. No matter how terrifying the mutant beasts and sinister devils were, little Xie could take care of them. I'm so envious of Big Brotherin. Even his sword can move on its own, and he's so powerful. Let's stroll through this perilous realm like we're strolling through a garden. Woof. Dabai sighed with emotion as he looked at little Xie floating in the air. Little Xie's power is second only to mine, to be honest. None of the trash sinister devils around us are a match for her. They're all just delivering themselves to her. And Lin chuckled. His trip to the abyss of evil was simply too comfortable. Riding on Dabai's back, he didn't even have to move his feet. Little Xie paved the way. He didn't have to do anything. She really was like a master. Awesome. A thought suddenly occurred to Lin. Was this what it felt like to farm monsters? It was a very peculiar feeling. Little Xie wasn't interested in any of the treasures they encountered along the way, so Lin took all of them and rewarded Dabai with a spirit fruit or two from time to time. Everyone was happy and elated. The central region of the abyss of evil was filled with twists and turns, but Lin and the others were not slow at all. Little Xie slashed through all of the sinister devils, evil spirits, and ferocious beasts with a single sword strike. Poison miasma, slaughter formations, and illusionary formations were all unable to withstand a single sword strike from little Xie. 20 hours later, within an indistinct spatial rift, all of the sinister devil-powerful beings were trembling uncontrollably within. They were all powerful beings in the central region of the abyss of evil, and all of them possessed power comparable to that of a soul formation stage powerful being. Gasp! That's way too terrifying. Just who is that little girl? The resentful Poison King didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was slain by that little girl. Thank God you notified us in time. Otherwise, I really would have followed the scent of dog meat to find them. We're no match for them. Let's lay low for now. They seem to be heading toward Master Dark Demon's territory. Haha, that's suicide. Master Dark Demon is the Emperor of the Abyss of Evil. If they go there, they'll still be crushed to death by Master Dark Demon. They'll pay the price for their arrogance and ignorance. Let's follow them and see what happens to them. Let's go together in a place where countless wandering souls wandered. This place was filled with ghostly wails and demonic howls, filled with endless negative emotions. Darkness, depravity, violence, bloodshed, pain, despair. A sinister devil with a wingspan of over 100 meters and a substantial, twisted body covered in layers of black armor had a sinister expression on its face as it stared straight ahead with a pair of dark blue eyes. Roar! It let loose an almighty roar. The space around it was sealed, and demonic energy swept forth like waves. Those with weak minds would instantly go insane. I am the Dark Demon, the Emperor of the sinister devils in the abyss of evil. You dare to trespass on my territory? Die. It slashed its claws through the air as it spoke. An inky black blade projection imbued with the power of depravity flashed through the air like lightning, and the space around it crumbled as countless ghosts wailed and howled. All of the nearby rock formations were strangely corroded into twisted objects. It was also in that instant that a little girl charged toward it with a black sword in her hand. Evil sword technique, soul destruction. Light flashed from the evil slaying sword, and the dark demon's claws were instantly pulverized. What? An expression of shock and horror appeared on the dark demon's face. However, before it could react, the sword slash, which could not be seen clearly, had already landed on its body, slicing through it without any obstruction. The lake behind it was sliced in half, and a bottomless fissure was carved into the cliff face. There was nothing that could block this sword slash. Little Cies slowly sheathed her sword before standing in front of the dark demon with a cold voice. Who dares to call themselves emperors? Ah! The dark demon finally let loose a wail of anguish, and its body expanded before exploding violently. Boundless black energy began to flow into the evil-slaying sword. Little Cies' cheeks became even more flushed, as if she had become drunk. Even though it's not very powerful, there's a lot of it, and it's also very pure. Sinister devils of this level are quite good. And Lin, I want more. Little Cies' eyes were a little glazed over as she looked at Lin. And Lin pinched Little Cies' round cheeks with a dark expression. Do you think return to Void Stage sinister devils are to buy food? You want them just like that? Let's just leave it to fate. We'll just have to explore this place more often. Lin and Little Sia continued onward. Within the shadowy space, all of the sinister devils have been scared witless. The most powerful dark demon, the emperor of all sinister devils, had been insta-killed by a little girl with a single sword strike. What had just happened was completely unimaginable to the sinister devils. The massive disparity in power struck them with an indescribable sense of horror for the first time. What kind of being has entered this place? It's too terrifying, too terrifying. They just said they wanted to explore this place more often. Holy F***CK? What are we still standing here for? Run. The demons were so frightened that they scattered and fled in all directions. Chapter 1239. And Lin and Little Sia didn't have to travel very far before they arrived at a strange cave. The cave was situated beside a lake not far away from the dark demon territory. It had a diameter of around 100 feet, and it was impossible to see how deep it was. An aura of darkness and depravity emanated from within, as if it were the gate to hell. I just used my divine sense to investigate the cave. It's over 30,000 meters deep. My divine sense is unable to ascertain its exact depth. And Lin spoke with a grave expression. Could this be a passageway that leads to the deepest part of the abyss of evil? Woof. Dabai speculated. Little Sia made her way over excitedly. Let's go. There must be a lot of sinister devils in there. And Lin was a little speechless as he looked at little Xie with concern in his heart. This little girl seemed to be addicted to slaying sinister devils. What if she wanted to stay here and didn't want to go back? Let's go. Little Xie leaped into the cave first. Hurry, Dabai, and Lin urged. Dabai looked on at little Xie's departing figure, and he immediately activated his jet flying dog mode to catch up to little Xie at an extremely fast speed. Everyone descended at a rapid pace. The space around them was dark and deathly silent. There was no light, no sound, no life, no end, for some reason, and Lin felt as if he were about to disappear into the boundless darkness of this world. This continued until Dabai couldn't help but sneeze. Achoo! The sound of his sneeze reverberated through the cave and traveled infinitely far. Holy sh*t, this is way too deep. Just where am I supposed to go? Woof! Dabai grumbled with his tongue out. We've already descended for 50,000 meters, but we still can't see the end. It really is quite deep, and Lin couldn't help but comment. The bottom of the abyss of evil appeared to be even deeper than they had imagined. After descending for another 50,000 meters, they finally discovered an exit. Little Xie was already waiting for them at the exit. Phew! It's so big outside. Woof! Dabai exclaimed in surprise as he emerged from the cave. And Lin ignited the great holy flame in his hand, and a dazzling light illuminated an area with a radius of over 10,000 feet. There were no more rock walls to be seen, only the uneven ground and an extremely vast space. This place is like an underground mezzanine. And Lin was also a little astonished by what he saw. He had thought that the underground would be narrow, but the abyss of evil's bottom was so vast. He had thought that the underground would be small, but the bottom of the abyss of evil was so vast. And Lin didn't have any objections. The Dark Soul Lake and extremely powerful sinister devils that he was looking for weren't marked on the map, so he could only rely on luck. Wait for me, Wolf, Dabai suddenly said, and Lin turned and saw Dabai. Wolf, holy run, Dabai said. Dabai Xiao Xie Bei Bei's face. Holy F***, CK. Dabai, you've gone too far. And Lin turned pale with fright. I don't do that. Why don't you make a toilet for me, Wolf? Dabai rolled his eyes. Besides, my pee is no normal pee. It's a locator pheromone. Dabai continued, and Lin was confused. Locator pheromone? That's right. My sense of smell is extremely sensitive to the liquid that I excrete. It can transform into a special type of information that allows me to accurately smell its location from over 500 kilometers away. Woof, Dabai said proudly, and Lin was astonished. You can smell where you pee from over 500 kilometers away? That's bad *SS. That's a good way to prevent getting lost, little Xie said with a serious expression. Dabai chortled with glee. That's right. This place is so big and so dark. I won't forget my way back if I pee, Woof. And Lin's lips twitched, but he didn't know what to say. There was no one else who could be so righteous and proud after taking a piss on the ground. Dabai's urine began to seep into the ground, forming some kind of special ripple. Dabai took a deep breath, and an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. After a while, he nodded with satisfaction. It's done, let's go, Woof. And Lin continued onward in the direction that little Xie was pointing. Not long after that, hiss, 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 the sound of metal grinding against metal suddenly erupted. 3 black figures pounced toward Lin and the others at the same time, and their terrifying auras compressed the air around them. Little Xie instantly slashed an inky black sword projection through the air with her evil slaying sword. She was so fast that even Lin was unable to follow her with his eyes. In the next instant, the 3 black figures that were pouncing toward them all exploded, insta-killing 3 soul formation stage sinister devils with 1 sword strike. Impressive. Off to the side, Lin applauded with an expression of approval. Little Xie absorbed the sinister devil's energy and continued onward. After traveling for over 50 kilometers, they arrived at a place where a viscous substance was hovering in the air, as if the air had been filled with a filthy, jelly-like liquid. An inky black figure opened its crimson eyes before slowly pulling out a huge sword from its back. Boom! A terrifying aura swept forth like a tsunami. The humanoid sinister devil made its way toward Lin and the others. The projection of a violent black lizard dragon appeared behind it, and its sinister devil aura combined with the aura of the Western Dragon tribe swept toward Lin and the others at the same time. I am the evil Dragon Lord, and I rule over billions. The sinister devil didn't even get a chance to finish its sentence before little Xie charged toward it and slashed down with her evil slaying sword. Evil sword technique, soul destruction. The blade of the sword pierced through the air, leaving a trail of lightning in its wake. The humanoid sinister devil's expression shifted drastically in that instant, and it slashed through the air at an extremely fast speed. A resounding boom erupted, and the space within a radius of over 1,000 feet crumbled. The sinister devil hurtled back for over a kilometer, and its hands trembled as an extremely obvious crack appeared on its huge sword. Its expression became extremely grave. What a terrifying sword strike. Who the hell are you? To think that it was able to block little Xie's sword strike. This guy is a lot more powerful than the Dark Demon Emperor. And Lin looked on with intrigue. Little Xie didn't reply to the evil Dragon Lord's question. Instead, she used her movement techniques to close in on it again. Insolent fool. The evil Dragon Lord flared up with rage, and it slashed its sword through the air like the roar of a heavenly dragon. The sword projection materialized into a black dragon, and the space in its wake was polluted and viscous. Little Xie didn't take evasive measures. Instead, she wielded her sword with both hands, and at the same time, a divine symbol appeared on the blade of her sword, transforming it into the purest darkness. And Lin could only see boundless darkness as he looked into the distance. Evil sword technique, royal divine monarch. An extremely domineering sword intent soared into the sky, as if it were a divine monarch himself. Her petite body stomped the ground violently, and the recoil created a crater that resembled a meteorite crater. In the blink of an eye, the evil Dragon Lord's black dragon sword strike was sliced in half. Little Xie had already appeared behind the evil Dragon Lord, and she knelt down on one knee while maintaining a sword strike stance with both hands. Behind her, the evil Dragon Lord howled with grief as its body was sliced in half. Chapter 1240. After being sliced in half, the evil Dragon Lord's body was still writhing on the ground as it wailed with anguish. This evil Dragon Lord was quite powerful to be able to withstand 2 of little Xie's sword strikes. In contrast, Lin was struck by a sense of inferiority after witnessing little Xie's sword techniques. As a sword spirit, why did he feel like little Xie's combat prowess was even more bad *SS than his own? If this continued, he was going to be completely humiliated. Was he going to have to suck up to a little girl in the future? How is that supposed to be? How is that supposed to be? Little Xie, stop. And Lin immediately yelled at the sight of little Xie raising her evil slaying sword. Little Xie's body faltered slightly, and she cocked her little head to the side as she blinked with confusion in her eyes. I have something to ask this evil Dragon Lord, and Lin explained. Oh, then hurry up, little Xie replied in an indifferent voice as she lowered her sword. She was still waiting to absorb this sinister devil's energy. It had to be delicious. And Lin rode Dubai over to the evil Dragon Lord and looked down at the 2 balls of inky black objects on the ground. Let me ask you, who is the most powerful being here, and where is it? One of the dark beads was in the hands of a super powerful being among the sinister devils. It was most likely the most powerful being in the abyss of evil. The evil Dragon Lord was extremely powerful, and had already reached the pinnacle of the sinister devils, so it should know that being. The 2 writhing black objects abruptly faltered before bursting into raucous laughter, as if they had heard something unbelievable. Ha ha! You want to find our king? Did I hear that right? You want to fight him? What an idiot who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think you can defeat our king just because you've defeated me? You're too arrogant and ignorant. I don't mind telling you. You're going to die if you go there anyway. The evil dragon lord pointed in a certain direction. Keep going in that direction, and you'll see a green lake. Keep going in the direction that the tip of the lake is pointing to, and that's where our king is. And Lin was completely dumbstruck by the evil dragon lord's words. Why was this be asterisk starred so cooperative? He had wanted to torture him, but he didn't expect him to tell him the king's location so readily. If the king had spoke of knew how it cooperated with the enemy, what would he think? I really want to see you being tortured to death by your king. Your expressions of remorse and despair will definitely be very beautiful. The evil dragon lord wriggled its body with anticipation in its eyes. Is that so? No matter what the result is, you won't be able to see it. And Lin said indifferently, Little Xie, do it. As soon as his voice fell, an inky black sword projection engulfed the evil dragon lord's body. Little Xie carefully sampled the sinister devil's energy, and her eyes became darker and darker. Her aura also swelled explosively, becoming extremely powerful. Little Xie, aren't you becoming more powerful a little too quickly? And Lin was a little surprised. Can your body handle it? Will it explode like a balloon? A faint smile appeared on Little Xie's face as she raised her proud head. Become stronger? Foolish master, who told you that my original strength was my true strength? My original power was like a dried-up river. Even though I had a body that could accommodate hundreds of rivers, the remaining energy within my body was extremely sparse. Now, these sinister devils have unexpectedly transformed into fresh water to nourish my body and revitalize my river. In other words, I'm not becoming more powerful. Instead, I'm recovering my original power. Little Xie explained with a proud expression, not forgetting to shoot a disdainful glance at Enlin. She had fought with Enlin for the first time, during which she had nurtured her spirit, and she had been humiliated by Enlin. She had never forgotten that. When her power was almost fully recovered, Little Xie was going to show him what a true sword spirit was like. And Lin didn't know about Little Xie's complicated thoughts, and he asked with a curious expression, How much longer do you need to recover your power? Will you be able to break through to the divine tool level after that? Little Xie was in a good mood, and she replied with a smile, I've already recovered half of my power. I should be able to break through to the divine tool level after I completely recover my power. And Lin was very elated. If Little Xie could break through to the divine tool level, then he would be able to progress to the return to void stage even more quickly. At the very least, he would be able to progress to the return to void stage before he graduated. By the way, Little Xie, your evil sword techniques seem to be very powerful. Can you teach me? And Lin stroked Little Xie's head with a warm smile on his face. Little Xie swatted Enlin's hand away with a disdainful expression. I can't teach you. Techniques are easy to teach, but true intent is very difficult to teach. Only after I progress to the divine tool level and inject my powerful divine intent into you will you be able to completely inherit my techniques. And Lin ignored the disdain in Little Xie's voice and was extremely elated to hear this. He didn't want to cultivate techniques in earnest. He preferred to inject techniques into his mind. Wasn't that how the system worked? He was extremely elated that Little Xie knew how to do this. Useless. Little Xie pursed her lips and harumphed before continuing onward. She was heading in the direction that the evil dragon lord was pointing. She was going to meet the king that the evil dragon lord was referring to, and Lin had no objections. He suspected that this king was most likely the owner of the dark bead. The three of them continued onward for a while, and sure enough, a green lake appeared before them. This green color was due to the peculiar energy imbued within the water. And Lin hadn't even come into contact with the water, but he could already sense that the water was imbued with powerful poison and negative energy. The tip of the lake is in that direction. Little Xie pointed up ahead. This lake was like a green teardrop, and the tip of the teardrop was pointing toward the direction where the king was located. However, Little Xie didn't even get a chance to move before Lin latched onto her hand. Little Xie raised an eyebrow. What is it? I can sense a spiritual power from this lake. and Lin said with excitement. What about it? Little Xia was perplexed. The other dark bead exists within the Dark Soul Lake. The Yin energy here is abundant, and there's also a spiritual power here. Isn't that a symbol of the Dark Soul Lake? There's a dark bead at the bottom of the lake that I want. And Lin was elated. He had been searching high and low for it, only to stumble upon it by chance. This discovery was a pleasant surprise. Wait for me up here. I'll be back soon. And Lin dove headfirst into the lake as he spoke. Dabai recoiled upon seeing this. This lake is so terrifying. Is Big Brother going to be all right? I feel like I'll be melted into nothingness if I dive in. Woof. Little Xia shot a glance at Dabai. Don't worry about the lion, little puppy. Your worries are completely unfounded. This lake can drown little puppies, but it won't drown a lion. Dabai, not only was little Xia very powerful at slashing people, but she was also very terrifying at stabbing people's hearts. Just as Dabai was sighing with emotion, little Xia was already scribbling on the ground with her sword in hand. What are you doing? Dabai asked. Lin has dove into the lake, and a battle could erupt soon. I'm setting up a spell formation as a precaution so that I can help Lin in time, little Xia replied. Dabai was enlightened upon hearing this, and he sighed with emotion. Even though little Xia had a vicious tongue and a violent personality, she was still quite considerate of Big Brother in thinking of this. Little Xia became even more adorable